We are live. This is episode 89. I gotta see where I'm at. D,
I
what's going
know.
on with you?
Oh my gosh. Everything. It's the holiday season. We have been traveling. We've been on the road. We have not slowed up this year. I mean, I didn't even send out a Giving Tuesday, anything for that. We've just been all systems go trying to get it together for everybody. So we're here. I know
Yep,
everybody misses us.
yep. If you didn't catch last week episode 88, where I talked about where you at. I don't see you at CubeCon. Where you at? Looking for you. I don't see you out there. We also, did a little stuff on quantum computing. I'll do a deeper dive on Wednesday on our Wednesday night show, which will be on meetup.com. If you don't know, we have Wednesday night meetup. You can find us at meetup.com/women in Linux, where we've been running it for almost 7 years now. And we've been talking about training, learning. I've been training on Linux, learning Kubernetes, Terraform, everything you could possibly think of. Right? We try to get it in. Right? So, D, you know, it's not often that we get this person to come through for us. When you're a celebrity and everybody know you, you know you can't walk 5 feet at a conference. I ain't gonna say 5 feet. You can't walk one inch at a conference, and somebody is coming up or they waiting. And I love it. It gives me joy on the inside when we're standing there talking, and I'm like, let me just back up, let the people in, because they gotta get it in, right?
But it's also to me, it is a great feeling and honor to know that this person, comes in and takes time out to just hang out. Sometimes,
We got to do it right,
people,
D.
in these tech streets is a different, it's
Uh-uh.
a different something.
We
But
gotta
when
do it
somebody
right,
come
D.
take their time out and just be chilling with you
We
and they
got
just like, I just want to be me right now. That's what
ATL's
I
finest.
appreciate.
ATL's finest.
Be you around me. That's what I this is that's networking. That's what it is. So that's what I truly look forward to is just, getting that good information, not only, learning and growing, but also just spending like just good genuine quality time with good people.
Yeah, I call them ATL's tech finest. How about that? But anyway, long overdue. We want to welcome to the stage with a round of applause. Make your hand clap. Everybody clap for in the back, on the side. Mr. Kelsey Hightower, how are you this evening? I had to give you your grand intro.
I like it. I like it. Hey, look, when I was growing up in Atlanta around this like 96, 97,
Hot times.
and this is when, if you know, you know about Old National.
Own that.
And you go
Yeah.
to Old National and they hit you to the flea market, right? For some reason, when you go in there, you come out, you just want a grill. Now, if you don't know what a grill is, you know what I'm saying? You see people smile, they got the gold teeth.
Hmm.
Some people smile, they just got one tooth done. Their money ain't where it's supposed to be yet. So you just get you one at a time. Now, I said I was going to get me a grill. I said, one day in 97, I was like, one day when I get my money right, I'm going to get me a grill. I got my grill. Hold on. Let me go
Oh,
get it
you
real
got a
quick. Hold on.
grill? I ain't even
Did
got
you go
one.
get your girl?
Oh, bring it on out. He got a grill. I ain't even got my grill. Now he gonna make me go get my Air Force Ones. I got it. If you got a grill, you gotta have Air Force Ones without the crease in them. You know, you gotta have that. I don't even have my grill. I don't have my Air Force Ones. Sadie, you said grill like you see teeth.
Your teeth, your grill, like from Eddie's gold teeth, your gold grill.
Eddie's
Yeah,
Eddie's gold teeth.
Eddie's still making grills.
I said I was going to get my grill now. Yeah, I'm professional now. So my grill is made by this company called Invisalign.
I knew it. I knew it. I was like, I know he didn't get him an Eddie's. Look at that. Look at that. I caught you
Perfect.
with that. I'm like, what? What?
So I
Went
had
to
to
the
get my
dentist
grill.
today. I went
It's
to
made
the
out of
dentist
plastic now.
today.
So when you done with this grill, your teeth going to be right. So I
And
I
why
made my
Straight.
and why they get together, they right. Look at
or the
that.
glistening. So I got my grill. So I made it. Now it wasn't the type of grill I thought. It's not made out of gold. It's made out of plastic.
It's
It's
all good.
expensive too now. It do
Yeah,
cost,
yeah.
but it gets you
And
right.
on wrong, and on with the clear grill, and
Hey, thanks
drop
for having me
and
here.
no
Hey,
problem,
one
man. Make sure
one
y'all
thing
get the lights up.
I've been waiting to tell people about our experience at KubeCon. So if you've never been to KubeCon before, KubeCon was started by me and two other people way back in the day, in the early days of Kubernetes. We just wanted something for the community. And the CNCF since then has grown into this. I mean, it's a trade show at this point. You got 10,000 plus people there every year. You got the
Hmm.
booths. I mean, they giving away stuff, this, that, at that level. But after the conference, the part Tamika was talking about was the hallway track. You know, we just sitting there some way, somehow. Every time I go to a conference and you there, y'all got the legions of every other. Y'all like black folk magnet. I don't care if you come from Kenya, Nigeria, Atlanta, College Park, Florida. Somehow y'all find them all. No tweet needed, no text message, no email. It just boom, y'all got them. And
That's
then
right.
somehow I get picked up and I get to just meet everybody in one shot. But y'all remember what happened that one night we hung out all night? It was legendary. I've never seen
Right.
this in my 15-year career of going to tech conferences. We sitting in the lobby at the Marriott. We chilling. We tired. It's probably, we should have been gone home by now. It's good 10:30, 11. You know, it gets so late you start lying, right? People just start telling stories for
I
no
need a
reason.
tissue
You
now.
just like,
I need a
okay,
tissue.
obviously it's getting late. And remember, when Buddy walked through, he had a badge on. We thought he was at KubeCon.
Right.
He walked through, what he say? He said, I bet y'all not playing no spades. And we was looking like, you trying to
Boss
challenge
up.
our blackness at the conference? That's not
You
finna
know who we
happen.
are?
Now, the truth was we wasn't playing no spades because we ain't had no cards. So he was right. But y'all remember he was about a good 4 feet away.
He was
Right.
far. He was on the other side of our section.
I said, you ain't got no cards. This dude went like he was a villain, superhero. He threw the cards. They spun and landed in the middle of the table. And you know
Correct.
he a true spades player because the pack was pristine with a leather case. That means
Correct.
these cards go with him everywhere. Hospital, dentist, pick up the cousins from school in case the teacher want to play. He
Right.
got his cards ready. And we played a whole round of spades in the middle of KubeCon. So to me, that was like a little legendary moment. We sat down for a good 5-10 minutes before we realized that he was at another conference
He was like,
about
"So
something
how do
totally
you guys
different.
enjoying the conference?" We were like, "CubeCon is great." He was like, "Wait a minute, y'all not with us?"
Mm-mm.
Y'all not with us? Yeah, we us. We're together, us collectively. He was like,
So I want to say appreciate y'all because I'm pretty sure what happens for me, along what happens for our community, y'all create memorable spaces for them. People who get into tech for the first time, you know, people mid-career trying to find their way, either learning more skills. I know y'all do that for them, but it's probably the same thing. Like a lot of my memorable moments is when y'all be there, making sure it reminds me like where I come from, the family, the people out
Hmm.
here doing all the work. A lot of people ask like, what is the work? What's the hard part? The hard part is that stuff that don't show up in the keynotes. It don't show up in the talks. It's that
Correct.
hands-on when nobody looking, grinding, getting your skills up. So when you show up at the conference, at the job, at the interview, you actually have your skills together. And that's the only
Hmm.
way you're gonna really break into tech and then stay here. So I just want to
Correct.
give y'all that shout out and
I,
thank y'all for keeping
we
making that happen.
appreciate you, man. We appreciate you. And I think one of the biggest things, the biggest challenge for me is actually getting people to the conference. And then once they get there, to make sure they get the experience of the conference. And the experience of the conference, it's not just going to the talks. It is the hallway track. It is talking to the speakers. It is like, oh man, can I get up here and do a talk myself? Can I see myself on stage? What does that look like? So I really try to make sure that everybody at least gets that experience, or at least challenge themselves to at least get that experience as well too. And I think that's a huge task to me, because I know when I first got started, um just to start speaking, I was just like, oh wow, like I gotta get this talk, and they say I gotta do it in 30 minutes, and what am I gonna
Nervous.
say to people? And
Look at these
I,
slides. Look at these
uh,
slides. Clean them up. What to do? Let's listen to me. Okay, how did I sound? What do I need to do?
And
yeah,
the one thing
now
you all
that's
both
different.
mentioned this was what people do before they come. So it's one thing to give somebody a free ticket. It's another to pay for their accommodation, hotel, and flight. But when you get there, sometimes people don't have no strategy. What talks do I go to? How I get the most out of this time being spent between them? And a lot of people get confused. A lot of people think conferences are just where you go and brag about, whatever you working on or you advertising on behalf of your company. To be fair, there's a little bit of that too. But the real purpose of this is that the people who've been doing the work, it's like when you go to the all-star game as a player, you're there because of the work you put in before the
Hmm.
all-star game, right? Maybe you go on a network with your peers or just celebrate the accomplishments of the profession that you're in. And when you go to an event like a KubeCon with that kind of strategy behind you, like, hey, I'm new in tech, I've been investing in these two areas. So yeah, you can get lost in a place that has 10, 15 tracks. But when you have a strategy, like, hey, this is the skill, this is where I'm growing, and you look at the menu before you go to the restaurant, so you ain't the one taking the longest to order, and everybody else done got their stuff together. It's like that. Like, just
Hmm.
kind of know what's available. If you don't eat seafood or you're allergic to shellfish, you don't want to go to Atlanta seafood. Like,
Right.
that's not for you. Like, don't go there. But if it does match and you know what's on the menu, then I think you can have the best time possible. So I love the fact that y'all are putting that out there in terms of have a strategy before you go.
Right. And then link up with people too. Like don't go by yourself if you don't, you know what I'm saying? Like link up and follow some, look at the schedule, find out those speakers, go to their talks, link up with people who are possibly, and that's what the whole Slack community is for, and the different Slack groups is who's talking, who are you interested in seeing, what are they doing? Like that's a real thing, right? That's how I look at it. Now,
I don't think people really take advantage of the buddy system. And no matter what spaces Tam and I go into, it's always so infectious because we are truly enjoying ourselves and that energy just exudes and it's a magnet. It's a magnet, the buddy system, and knowing that you're going somewhere, somebody has your back, and if you're not too sure, that's okay because you guys are going to do it together. And I think what happens is in tech, in this remote world, everybody's in this silo and they think they have to have it all together and they have to get it all together. We're learning. We're always going to be learning. You're not going to have it all together 100% of the time. And that's one good thing about the conference as well is that you're learning. You're learning what's coming down the pipe. New what's trending, what's not, what's old news, what's good news, what are people thinking, and being able to put your hands on those thought leaders in the industry. And Heather, if you're here tonight, I'm going to say it. I'm so glad that you chose to step out on faith and just do it. And Heather is a great example of somebody that has been doing it afraid and just say, what do I have to lose? Filling out this application, this scholarship application, and getting there. And Heather got um airfare, board, room and board,
hmm
a conference ticket, and had a great time. She had a great time, and she figured, I have a lot more to learn. Let me get my game plan together. But you know what? I want somebody else to come next time with us. I see that need. So hats off to you, Heather, out there.
yeah. So speaking of KubeCon and what's coming down the pipe, now, w- w- we had this conversation the other day, Kelsey, about what my thoughts are about what's coming down the pipe, and so yeah, I'll leave quantum out for right now. I'll leave quantum out for right now. But what do you think after being at KubeCon and also traveling around the world? What do you think the hot industries are that are coming down the pipe where we need people contributing now, or we need people just to even look at it? Like, what are your thoughts?
The surprising thing that whenever you try to create something new, like new, like the world's never seen before, the reason why that's hard is because it's not about just making the thing work. You actually have to tell people what it is.
Hmm.
And that part is really hard because there tends not to be an ecosystem. Like think about where like VR goggles were 10 years ago.
Right.
Like what you gonna watch on it? What games you finna play? You
Hmm.
can't build nothing for it, not 10 years ago. And
Right.
so just having this like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, but I can't do anything with it. So that it doesn't go anywhere. So it takes a while for an ecosystem. But you got to remember the other part of the equation. So there's the new stuff, new, shiny, it may or may not work. The truth is about a lot of new stuff, it doesn't need to work. That's what it's a risk. Like if it doesn't work, who cares? The
Right.
world will be fine. Maybe it's a missed opportunity, but it doesn't actually have to happen. But when you think about like what tech is, so when you say like what's the new and shiny, here's the thing. Most of the things that we talking about now are someone looking at the current things and making them better. The watch is old as day. Apple
Hmm.
Watch is a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem probably at this point.
Hmm.
Headphones, old as day, multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. And so I think a lot of people, if you just look around your community and say, I think about the people behind Uber. You look around and say, wow, this taxi game is so outdated. It's not even making no progress. How can technology help here? So the way I look at it at this point, most of the tech you need through the last couple of decades, we know how to build social apps. We know how to build financial services apps. We know how to do things that pass information quickly, secretly, encrypted, you name it. We got the base layer of technology across so many of these spectrums and they keep getting better. So really to me, like the next level stuff is honestly anyone that could take the stuff from 10 years ago,
Hmm.
not the stuff that's going to come out next year. If you can really leverage, for example, AI is very old. Some
Correct.
people are excited about being able to take tech we discovered 10 years ago and apply it to problems of today. You changing the game right now. So I think we're at the point now where a lot of this tech is getting mature, it's mature enough to use. So I would say this, if you were doing data analytics and you really good at Oracle databases, right, your SQL game is killer. You could write a query for anything.
Hmm.
Then you got the foundation now to say, how else would you process data? Well, AI ML for a lot of people is an extension of that. It's not like, you could think about it as like this new thing no one has ever seen. But in many ways, you're feeding it a bunch of data and you're giving people, in the case of like ChatGPT, you're giving people a new surface to interact with your service or application. So if you think about it, what problems were you solving with the database? Now,
Hmm.
what problems were hard to solve with a database where maybe generative AI could be better, right? You can take a database and fill out a web template and you got a website. But what if people want dynamic content based on their unique preferences and needs? Well, you're probably not going to get there with a SQL database. Same problem.
Hmm.
But when you look at this new tech or tech that may be new to you, you might be able to tackle the same problem in a better way. So I'm telling most people right now, like you can try to zoom and predict the future. Like go ahead, it can be fun at times. But I think the most important thing is like what's available right now, all of it. Like when you go to Home Depot, there are some people that know how to use some of the more advanced tools inside of Home Depot. You can buy them too. You just got to figure out how to apply them to real world problems. So to me, that's the next level. The people who are
Correct.
doing well right now can look at common problems around them, your local barbershop, your local food market. There are gaps in all of these industries, and you could join said company and close the gap between them and the people who out here excelling because they know how to leverage that technology. I think we are at that part of the cycle.
I can agree with that. Now, when we say that, what are we? What type of companies are we talking about? Companies that are startups,
Let's do
companies that
Piggly
are
Wiggly,
all right.
right? If you from the South, you know what Piggly Wiggly is, right? We're not
Got you.
talking Kroger. We're not talking Publix. We're not talking Walmart because they sell groceries too. We talking Piggly Wiggly. This gonna be in your small town, suburb, grocery store, right? They would
One
like to
traffic light.
have food delivery service. They would like to have online shopping where people can just pull up and scan a QR code and someone just comes out and puts the groceries in the car. Why would that grocery store not want those services? Now, who is going to step up to go from working at Walmart, Kroger, Publix, where they do have these things, and say, you know what, I'm about to take my skill set and be the BP of Information of Technologies for Piggly Wiggly Corporation. And I'm
Gotcha.
going to take them and transform them. How are we going to do it? Well, they got the same barcodes as everybody else.
Hmm.
They got the same aisles as everybody else, and they probably got the same customer base looking for that experience as everybody else. And what a lot of those people will do is they will just say, you know what, can I scale what I know down to this area? Or I don't know nothing about that. I can't get a job in the IT department at Kroger, but shoot, I can go to the local Piggly Wiggly Corporation and say, hey, I think in 2 years, with some deliberate focus, we can take this technology and put it into our stores too. And you've seen good examples like that. Like I worked when I was at Google Cloud. There's a company HEB. That's like
Hmm.
the regional grocer in Texas, right?
Texas.
Hmm.
Hmm.
HEB do all of that, right? So they look and see what they're doing on the national stage. And HEB is like, we got this on law. We got everything from your Kroger type store to your Whole Foods type store. And they experiment with technology far in between. And I've met those people. Like, look, they like, hey, maybe we're not as fast or we're not going to be the first ones to do something. But it don't mean that we can't never learn the skills and do it. And I look at those class of people, that's the everyday people out here on the tech scene, learning what's available, combining it, and giving those capabilities to all the other companies. So that's kind of what I mean by just paying attention to the game, your own experiences that you see. And when you see a need, that's where you start to say, you know what, let me go over here where there's a need and fill in that gap and bring this technology with me.
Yep. And that's the other thing too is the need, right? How to identify the need and also how to utilize your skills in that place. Now, when we look at that, and and this is just something I've always stated skill wise, I still stick with the basics: a cloud, some automation tool, configuration tool. What else would you add into that? And it may not be cloud, it may be something on prem. But I don't know what else, what other skills would you think someone would need like right now and maybe for the next 10 years?
I mean, I think the ultimate skills is just like how to pay attention. So, for example, if you make movies for a living and you go to the movie theater and you watch the movie, now you and I watch the movie, we might say, who is in it? Is it funny? Is it good? You know what I mean? Now, a professional be like, what's the camera angle? How do you get a shot like that? Look at the lighting. What kind of lens are they doing?
Mm,
Look how many frame rates. I like the angles that they take. You know what I mean? They start seeing new perspectives. So then they go back to so that part around being able to pay attention, that means you can start to absorb and pay attention how the game is working. Now you might ask somebody, hey, have you seen this movie? Man, how did they get the color like that? So, oh man, to get the color like that, man, you got to stop using iMovies, bro. You need to upgrade to like DaVinci Resolve. What's that? Oh yeah, Blackmagic, they make cameras and other stuff, but the another thing they make is an editor and it allows you to do color grading. What's color
mhm,
grading? Oh, okay, you don't know about color grading. On your camera, instead of you using the little fancy default, you just got to go on raw format so you can color it in later to get it to look like that in the movies. So now you like, okay, I'm in this field. So let's just say you're doing Linux today. Let's just be very concrete, right? You saying, all right, I'm getting into the game. I'm a big believer in it. You got to start somewhere.
right.
Now, a lot of people, if you ask them, they're like, man, Linux is old. You don't have to worry about it. That's a mistake because you could go up the stack. And I've seen people who start to cruise up the stack, they have no idea how things work below. And so when things start getting a little slow or expensive, they don't know what to do. They're just like, I don't know, man. I just click the button, got a server, running the app, and it keep crashing. It's like,
On
oh,
a bare metal machine.
you don't know what you're doing. You don't know nothing
You don't
about
have the
Windows.
fundamentals.
You don't have the fundamentals. Now,
You don't
look,
have
if
the
you got enough
foundation.
money, you could probably hire the right person, but then you still don't know what questions to ask, right? So when you learn something like Linux, you say, okay, I'm learning this operating system. So on the fundamental level, you look at it, hardware needs operating system to make it useful. And you can learn to automate that operating system. That's great. So now let's say we're going to move up the stack. Now you might
Mhm,
say up the stack means learning some automation. How would you manage 100 of these things?
correct.
What value do we get from managing 100 of these things? If we're a US based company and we're about to launch in Australia, what's the limitations of this server? Should we really be using Nginx to serve images to people? or should I be looking at Acclimai, a CDN instead? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of times it's almost challenging, like, hey, I know what I know, but is there a better way of doing the thing that I'm currently doing? And I think that's when you get to the answer, like, why does Acclimai or Cloudflare exist?
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll say, oh, that's why I exist. So that's the thing. So now you can put it in your tool belt. So if I were to bet on some skills right now, and if I was, let's say I'm just starting from Linux so we can be very concrete, I got to learn how to program
Mm-hmm.
the language that my tools are written in. So if you go from Linux to automation, and let's say you learn Ansible, Ansible is written in Python, go learn Python. I know some people be like, nah, this other language is hot, but you using Python because you are using Ansible. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna go learn French where you live. You can't even read English and you finna go learn French. Like,
And you live in Texas.
yeah, we not strategic about it. So to me, it's like have a bit of a strategy. So now when you get to Ansible, you learn Python, you might decide that, you know what, where else can I do with Python? Oh, Python is the front end language for a lot of machine learning, data analytics, right? That is the number one programming language in the AI ML space. So you may
Mm-hmm.
be able to carry that skill set to there. But one thing I like to do is like, if I were to join a team, how can I actually be helpful? That's where kind of my tech stack starts. So if I join a company, I'm really good at Linux. And I remember one of the first skills I learned after Linux was databases,
Mm-hmm.
like how to do performance tuning on databases, how to recover them from outages, back up and restore. And then when I got into like a larger enterprise, I learned that putting together a query efficiently meant someone was waiting 2 seconds for a response or milliseconds for a response.
Correct.
And then I started to understand data structures. Like the way you store the data has a big bearing on how you retrieve the data. And then you get into API design. Why did I learn all those skills? The reason why I wanted to learn those is because a lot of times this is where business is articulated. When people say focus on the business problem, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that has to do with the interaction, and usually data is going to be involved. So if I work at the DMV, what data do we have involved?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We got people's photos. We got to protect those. Do we encrypt them at rest? Do we distribute them? Do we need a CDN? No, you don't need a CDN if you're doing this just for Baltimore. You don't need you store that locally because you're just going to print them on the ID. You're not making Facebook pages with it,
Right.
right? But I just wanted to understand like how to handle data, how to deal with it, and the tools available. So when I hear someone's idea in my head, it's like, you know what? We don't need a CDN for this because blah, but an S3 bucket in one zone with good backups is
Mm-hmm.
perfect for what we need. And I just wanted to make sure I knew what was in my toolbox to solve even higher level business problems and not just the problems that Linux solved. Because Linux is not enough to go
Mm-hmm.
into a business meeting and say, oh, I can make Linux do XYZ to solve. You probably don't have enough things in your toolbox
Mm-hmm.
to be helpful in that setting.
Right. And that goes back to what we said before is stacking your skills. When you start looking at moving up the actual, you could say the OSI model if you want to, moving up the OSI model if you want to, and saying, okay, well, look, I need programming, I need to understand databases. But the key, I think, out of all of that, and we said this at the conference too, is the impact and then the outcome, right? What are you doing? Does it have an impact? And what is the outcome of that? Are you speeding up the database? Are you securing the database? Are you what's that bottom line back to the company and also really back to the customer, because that's where the real value is at, because that pays the bills.
One thing I like that y'all do on the program, I know y'all have a segment or a dedicated show to just studying like companies going through their revenue, their stock, the investment. You're trying to really
Tech
understand
stocks
the
and
industry,
jobs.
yeah, where it's going. And
Hmm.
sometimes I do the same thing when I see a new product release. Let's use I met Aaron Levy, the CEO and founder of Box, right? So you look at the product, and on the surface, you're like, okay, you upload files and you store it there. It does a lot more than that. But some people look at it as a very simple thing. So when AI was all hype AI, generative AI, Chat GPT, and you look at what they shipped, they said, okay, what do people do with a service like that? You may upload your resume to something like Box, it's stored, and you can share it with somebody else. That's the easy mode. Maybe you
Hmm.
can collaborate. You paying someone to update your resume. They log in with their Box account. They can see it. You got the changes. That's great. Maybe even you version it. But when they came out with like what if we generate people's resume by just saying, you fill in a little bit, and we just do generative AI in the background to make the resume better, at least a good first draft. So
Mhm.
from a business tech perspective, I'm like, okay, they took something that would just hype, great piece of technology, and they actually turned it into a very useful business case. And so you study that feature, and then you start to really understand the difference between features and products. Box is the product. And
Mhm.
they've taken AI, which is like the talk of the town, and turned it into a feature that people will pay for. I think that's kind of the master stroke for any technologist, that when you start building up your tool belt, you start to realize, like, what could I do with this tech? And that's what I mean by just paying attention to what's happening and then filling gaps at your job or another job or somewhere where there's an actual need.
Yep. Now, amongst all of this, now I know one thing you have been big on is contributing to open source. And how has contributing to open source help you throughout your career? Like, what has that done for you? I guess in a long term perspective for you, what's your impact and the outcome of that?
I mean, when I was a kid, one thing that was dope is like you watching sports, right? You watch a game, you don't know what the rules are. So think about the first time you watch professional, you don't know what the rules are. You just people around you cheering when people do something like the shot go in the basket. You're like, man, dad looking real happy right now, so this must be a good thing. So as a kid, you just cheer too. And then
Hmm.
since you don't know why they cheering, when the other team put it in the basket, you like, yeah, and everybody look at you like, hey man, what team you with? You know what I'm saying? You need to pick a side. You don't cheer when that team score. You only cheer when our team score. So you start
Hmm.
to learn the rules. Now you can watch the game a lot and start to learn the rules, but in many ways you're just mimicking somebody else's behavior. And in that case, you're just a consumer. And then when you go play for the first time, it's like you don't know nothing about the game. You know how to watch it on TV. You even may have an emotional connection based on who win, but you don't know how to play. And that first time you dribble and you score, and it wasn't luck, sometimes you score, you be like, I can't believe that went in. I'm not going to take too much credit for that one. But when you get to the point where you can call your shot and it go in, that's very empowering. That means you can go to the park and you go into a different mode. You go into compete mode. You're not just happy for somebody to let you play. You
Hmm.
know it's gonna be a game. So you might start talking. Your confidence is like, bro, you can't. You start
Right.
doing all this extra stuff that ain't even part of the rules. Like trash talking is what come with confidence.
Like
So when it,
spades.
so when it,
I was
yeah,
just
like
about to say the
spades.
same thing.
Me
Say,
on the, remember the one dude at the thing. He's like, I'm about to learn something today. We looked at him. Was like, what? You don't know how to play spades? But we had to chill though. What was that movie? The Blackening. We
Yeah.
ain't want we
Yeah.
ain't we ain't want to turn it into a situation. If we was like, just be patient, take your time. Even if you don't know how to play spades, you still in the group.
Right.
But I think going to open source, it felt the same transition. It's one thing to be a system administrator. You learn to reboot the servers. You log in
Mhm.
via SSH. Maybe you can run a few commands. You look at the man pages. Maybe you get so good you don't even need to look at the man page anymore, right? You know what
Mhm.
the flags do. You know how to grep this log file to see what you want. But when you become a contributor, I think this is that same transition. You go from just consuming tech and complaining about, oh, this thing's slow, this thing terrible. And when you make your first contribution, you really feel like you got to go deep into the technology. You know that there's trade-offs, like, oh, why doesn't it just do this? And then when someone says, no worries, contributions accepted, and you jump into that project and you look at the complexity of the code, especially code that's been around 5 to 10 years, you can't just
Mhm.
throw it away and rewrite it in your favorite programming language. There's too
Mhm.
much that has been built up over time and experience. So you got to come in and humble yourself. You got to learn that code base. You have to deal with not just the initial commit, but also the maintenance. But it's very empowering because now you see the world different. So someone that has never contributed before, they don't really understand what that process is like. So they may say, hey, this tool can't do that. They say things like that. It can't do that. You can't do that with that. But when you contribute, it's like, oh, it's software. We can make it do that. Now, we may not
Correct.
want to, but you stop saying it cannot. And then you
Mhm.
open up the doors to imagination. You start to be like, you know what? This tool doesn't do what we need, but we can make it do what we need. because we now have a real world problem. And so then you start contributing either upstream or your own fork because your company doesn't want you doing open source, who knows. But
Right.
just having that confidence and knowing that you can also write code to make it do something else. When people say you can change the world, this is when a lot of people get the first feeling of that. Because you can go somewhere else. I remember doing my first open source projects. I went from contributing to other people's projects. The first projects I contributed to were Python. I was contributing to virtual env and a tool called PyPy around the packaging tools of Python. And when I went
Mm-hmm.
to my first tech conference, PyCon in Atlanta, I was already contributing. So I was meeting people that I was already working with through email and IRC channels before Slack.
Mm-hmm.
And when I made my first open source project, CompD, and I remember going to FOSDEM in Europe and watching someone give a whole presentation about how they were using a tool that I created in production. And that feeling became very real that yes, you are making an impact through your contribution. So to me, it's just a very important component for a lot of us, no matter what stage of your careers. It's never too early and it's never too late to kind of get into that world. And I think it does a lot for people.
Right. Now, with that contribution and the things that you have contributed over the years, the projects that you have contributed to over the years, uh, you got to Google, you contributed, and then one day I log in and I'm hitting Twitter and I see I'm retired. I'm out of here. Gone. I got my grill in.
Drop the mic.
And now you're doing what? Are you still contributing? Are you still uh, doing things with Google? What's your new venture now? Are you going to write your own operating system? What are you going to do?
So 20 years prior to that, I was like, I got to understand what enough is. Different people get to it at a different time. But for me, around 22, what's enough? And so my context here is that, look, I had a decent childhood. I worked at McDonald's like a lot of other people, nothing special there. I slept in my car a couple of nights behind a computer shop because I couldn't afford both the computer shop and an apartment. You got to pick. And you sit in there and you start thinking, like, what's enough? Like, what is success at this point? Is it a bunch of money? For some people, that is all they can see. Get as much money as possible and buy a bunch of stuff that other people look at and be like, wow, that's a nice pair of Jordans or that's a nice purse. And then some people, that's the feedback loop they need for their life, but not for me. I've been around money in different ways, managing comedians. You go on the road, they perform in the biggest arenas, Madison Square Garden, and you see what people buy and they still not happy. So for me at that age, I'm like, oh, so money isn't the end game, not at all. And I was like, what would freedom look like? And for
Mhm.
me at that time, it's like, you know what? Not worrying about what you thought. And it's hard. It's easy to say. Most people will say it, but they don't really believe it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you look at your outfit and be like, I like it, but would other people like it? Maybe I
Mhm.
should go change. And this is the debate we have with ourselves. And I just say, you know what? I'm gonna figure out what enough is. So everybody's probably done it. You have a number. If you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still be doing everything that you're doing now? And some people don't really even know how to answer this question because they haven't spent enough time thinking through this. You don't know when you're gonna die. You have no idea. If somebody told
Right.
you tomorrow you got 3 more days, I know you ain't going to work tomorrow. I I, I promise you that's not gonna be high on the. If you knew you only had 72 more hours, you're like, man, I can't wait to get off work so I can start doing all. You're not going.
And you're not gonna
T
call.
T-Mobile not getting their bill paid. Rent. If it's the 31st, rent ain't coming. Ain't getting
Mm.
paid. What you gonna do? I'm done. You would behave different. So I'm not saying it's that dire. But I'm saying is when you have a chance to think about it, what would you do if you could afford to buy your time back? And so part of that, and I'm going to get to the answer, but I think the
No,
context is
no, no,
important.
no. You're fine.
When you go to work, you're saying, what's the deal? The deal is I'm trading my time, my energy, my life for a check. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's how society is set up. Right? Even $100 million basketball players are doing the same thing. They may get paid a little bit more, but it's the same fundamentals. I trade my time for pay. So then I started asking this question: why do people want to pay me X amount of dollars for my time and expertise? And would I ever do the same? And that's a deep question. Would you buy your own time back if you could afford it?
Mm-hmm.
So the goal was to work really, really hard so I can buy it back. And y'all know how this works. The earlier you retire, you got to be thinking about the possibility you may live for a very long time, or the
Mm-hmm.
people you care about will live for a very long time, and you would like to be able to contribute to them being able to do that while not working. So
Correct.
I had a number, I hit that number, and it involved me putting money into the safest thing I could find at the time, US Treasuries. And if I could live well, and my daughter could live well, and my wife could retire too, and she could live well off the interest,
Mm-hmm.
not if a stock go up or not. Not that. I don't want that kind of risk. If I
Mm-hmm.
ever got to that number, I would leave. So I left. That was the plan. I had a plan, had a strategy. So I
Mm-hmm.
hit the strategy. So I was out. That's why I was out. I finally saved up to buy the thing I wanted to buy the most. So I did it.
Right.
Now, when you leave, what do? Well, the truth is, you do kind of whatever you
What
want
you're
to do. Now,
right.
that's not like I don't have private jet money. I don't have private jet, so you don't need to kidnap me. Me be practicing. Don't do that. It's not liquids in the U.S. Treasury, so don't do that. That's not gonna work for you. But I do got go to the grocery store, and it don't matter how much it costs money.
Right.
Just put it in the cart.
Right.
It's not on
You
sale
got
though, Dad. Put it in the cart. What you?
No coupons. You're not no. You ain't getting no
I use
coupons.
coupons. I'm not leaving $2 on the door. If
Right.
ketchup got a $2 off coupon, I'm
Oh,
going.
run it.
I take the time to scan the digital coupon in the store. They be like, "Fam, like, what are you doing?" I'm like, "That's $2." You know what I'm saying? Like, we not just leaving $2. Like, it took you more time. Just I said, well, we getting them too. So I am conscious about it. I just don't like to waste.
Listen,
Just
this
period.
this this how I look at this. Cause a lot of people say that, right? I said if you was walking down the street and you saw $2 on the ground, would you walk past it or would you pick it up?
I'm. It might be dirty, so
You gonna pick it
$2.
up.
I mean,
You gonna
but it
pick it
could
up.
be dirty. You know what I'm saying? COVID's still out here. They got some new stuff out here that I want to find out about. So I actually might debate $2. To me, the real challenge for me is what would you say no to? That
Mm,
like because some people say, hey, I'll give you 3,000 if you tweet about this thing you don't care about, and we just want to exploit your followers. It's an easy 3 grand. All you gotta do is tweet a thing that they wrote for you. You just put it on there. Money's yours. Would you say no to that? And why?
yeah, I
And
would.
that says a
Yeah, I
lot
say
about your
no.
situation.
Yeah, I say
What?
no.
But I'm thinking is if you short $2,228 and that opportunity come your way, tweet. You might even ask. You might turn into a thread just to make sure they satisfied with the work. And to me, I would understand because
Hmm.
that's just where you are. And so that's the way I try to think about it. What would I say no to? But honestly, the biggest things I kind of care about now at this point, given my situation, I don't want all of this to go away. And I started to think about it. In order to be kind, as people like, I wish I could, I like people who are kind. But think about the position you got to be in to be kind.
Correct.
You can't be having a terrible day. You can't be stressing about rent and find the energy you need to really be genuinely kind to somebody. It's just a hard thing to do when you're not where you want to be or need to be.
Hmm.
And so, given that I'm where I need to be, I can approach, and I think I've been doing it even before this point. I try to approach a lot of things with the absolute definition of kindness, but also I am not afraid to give that.
Hmm.
If I think about 15 years ago, I might have been afraid of somebody moving faster than I was. And if I tell him how to do what I'm doing, he might do it and get promoted before I do. So maybe I ain't got no answers to the question.
Hmm.
But when you're in a comfortable position and you're not worried about that, and it's okay if somebody takes something you gave them and run with it, I'm cool. I can just step in the background and be like, man, I'm glad you shining right now because I got enough. So to me right now, based on enough, what's still worth doing? So speaking engagements, but I'm not getting on the plane unless you paid the speaking fee, the travel fee. I like advising startups. but I don't want to advise the startups that's trying to make money and I can't get no equity too.
Hmm.
And so there, my value has been clear now. I know how to ask for what I think I'm worth. And I just want to make sure I'm doing things that actually are making an impact and I think are actually helpful for folks.
Now, speaking of that, did you have a hard time figuring out what you thought you were worth?
100%. 100%. I think there's a couple of times in my career where I would I'm not gonna share all the numbers. I don't want to get kidnapped. But when I was at Google, I was making enough money to have me on my career trajectory probably by 48, 50. I'm 42. So I was like, you know what? If I keep doing what I'm doing, everything gonna line up around that time. And for me, I was still happy with that particular outcome. So nothing was wrong. I'm enjoying life. This is a good pace, and I'm satisfied with it. It was enough. And I remember I had just did a keynote at Google Cloud Conference, and this is one of our bigger ones, right before COVID, 20, 30,000 people. And I killed that keynote. It was dope. It was good. And I remember I got a email from the Microsoft team like, hey, Kelsey, we want come over to Microsoft. I'm like, what? Do you know how much I make at Google? What are you talking about? Ain't going nowhere. I'm not even taking no interview. I'm good. My wife is like, babe, would you just go over there and see what they talking about? What are you talking about? You like, go see what it is. I said, all right, I'm gonna go see what it is. I went there, wonderful interview, met some wonderful folks. And I swear to God, when someone added zero to your situation, you'd be like, man, is that the right number? My wife's like, I told you. I'm like, yeah, you sure did.
Tam goes,
I,
for
I
me?
wouldn't have asked for that number. I
Correct.
wouldn't have asked for that number.
Correct.
If someone said, just write your number down, that's not the number I would have written down at all. And so I'm like, okay. Now I'm feeling myself because someone just told me what they believe I'm worth. So I was like, all right, let me ask for a little bit more just to,
Let me push it. What I
what they
got to
say, you can't,
lose?
you can't go with the first offer. Now, here's the truth is I put in this counter knowing good and well if they said no, I was going to take the original, to be honest.
Hmm.
I wasn't standing on business like that.
Hmm.
Now they came back and the number was higher than the counter. They said we're not playing. I was like, y'all not playing. I don't know what the numbers are supposed to be. And so I got that. And then at that point though, your confidence level goes up because you know now
Correct.
someone has put on paper, this is what we're willing to pay you, come through. And the Google team, they matched it. They matched it. And it was good because I kind of preferred to be at Google at that time, but I gave a
Mm.
lot of love and credit to Microsoft because they helped me understand
Your
what I
value.
should have been getting paid for what they thought I was bringing to the table. And there are many instances in my career where I didn't even know what to ask. So that's why in private, when people say, hey, Kelsey, what's the numbers? I tell them the numbers. I show them my documentation. I show them what I can. You redact things you're not supposed to share. But I try to show people the numbers. And you also got to learn how to do it without trying to be bragging and all,
Hmm.
because that's not important. The
Correct.
important part is the range HR told you is not the range,
Correct.
right? This is the real range, or at least the range that I've found for myself. You might go find a bigger range. I just want you to have a little bit more information to know that this number is possible. And for some people, just them knowing that makes them ask for the right number. And
Right.
so when that happens, I kind of see that as a win, but it takes a while. And remember, we talking just 5 years ago.
Hmm.
We're not talking like I got to this point a decade ago.
Hmm.
When I was good and people knew who I was, even then I still didn't know what the number was. So I think it is one of those things where it takes a lot of evidence to build a confidence. So that's why we got to share when we make it.
Yep. And that's what I do on the meetups. I try to share my number, because a lot of people will walk around and not know, and then a lot of times people don't believe that number could exist for someone, and then also not even exist for themselves. So I try to share those numbers, right? Like one of the things I posted was the they were looking for quant engineers. They were 6 months worth of experience with blockchain and Rust, and the job was paying $1 million. And then some people were like, "Oh, that's a scam." I'm like, "How do you know that's a scam? Like until you go apply for the job, until you talk to the people, how do you know that's a scam?"
I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of billionaires that they know by name, they are literally not the founders of the companies that they work at. They're employees. They can be fired. Some of them are billionaires. There's a lot of 100 millionaires you don't know the name. I guarantee you there are millions of $10 million people you have no idea who their name is. And it's normal. And so I think a lot of people may not just know the scope. And again, I think that's why it does kind of help to share, but also the context behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the context is 6 months. That's tough. Because if you're MIT math whiz, great programming skills,
Mm-hmm.
and you have built some stuff in Rust and blockchain, and you can come here and get me results, because yeah, I will pay you $1 million a year to come do that. But in 2 weeks, if you trash, you will be fired
Correct.
in 2 weeks. So we got to be clear, folks. You might
Yep.
be able to trick your way into the revenue game. Yes, you can trick, but I promise you, like in NBA, that's like, man, you be hooping. It's like, yeah, come game time,
You're gonna have to
you
show
you
up.
over 13 from the floor. The coach gonna be like, hey, bro, tell me you had an off night. We gonna try this again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We playing the Utah Jazz now. There's no reason you should go for 0 for 13 against the Utah Jazz.
Need for you to show up and show out, and
I
that's what
need
I
you to
say.
show up.
You got to be consistent. So I just want to make sure people know, yes, those numbers are attainable. Even higher numbers are attainable, but you need to make sure you can deliver results, because at that number, it's going to be hard to hide. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
pay you 80K, you can hide behind 50 other people on the team processing Jira tickets, and no one may catch you for a long time. If I pay you $2-3 million a year, we're gonna be needing to figure out what the results of that $2 to $3 million are.
Mm-hmm. What the return is, and that's why I always say you have to make sure that you are actually understanding what they need and understanding what you can do, and make sure you show up. You can't. It's you have to knock down the doors. I'm sorry, a lot of people don't want to believe that, but you're knocking down some doors. And when I say knocking down some doors, meaning the spotlight is on you, just like
I
you
also want to
sit.
be clear too. When you get to the higher levels, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of hands-on work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we clear. So let's say you're the best person in the world at Terraform. Like I'm talking about better than Mitchell and Armand, the founders of HashiCorp themselves. And they actually might be able to do it because I don't think they use it every day anymore. Like, so there's a chance you could literally be better. You could be like the number one person in the world, Guinness Book of World Record. You wrote and deployed the most Terraform in history. Okay. You might max out at 150, 200 with that skill. Not a bad place to be. Now, if you want to make more than that, I'm going to pay triple to the person to tell me that we don't need Terraform for this project. I'll pay somebody triple that's educated enough to say, oh, yeah, we don't need that for this project. And that's the difference. So I think you got to make sure you understand that there's a different set of skills required. I think at that level, you need the Terraform, though. I didn't say the one that said we don't need it, that they don't have those skills. It's just that they kind of, know how to make sure that the impact of Terraform or not using Terraform is there.
Right, and be able to explain that.
Explain it and
Right,
convince and stand by that and be right and be willing to be fired when you're wrong.
it's a
But, you know,
lot.
that takes a level of confidence that I think that is one of those skills that need to be put on the table. And what do we have to do to get that confidence factor up
Can we talk
for a
about that
lot of
nuance one
people?
time? Because I was mentoring the guy and he asked exactly that. He's like, Kelsey, I'm trying to go to that next level. And y'all would be so proud. This dude started probably 3 or 4 years ago. And he ran into the first situation where he was being underpaid, put himself on the job market, got a new job, doubled up. So I said, enjoy it. Don't worry about what everybody else's number is. Enjoy yours for now. and it's going to keep progressing. But he's like, Kelsey, I'm ready for the next level. So I said, let's do very concrete things in terms of what does the next level look like. So I'll give you an example. You get a Jira ticket, and Jira ticket say we need to buy new hardware, right? We're gonna buy some new hardware, and we're gonna let you buy the new hardware. So if you're gonna at an $80,000, what I expect for someone with 80K, I expect you to go get a few prices and email everybody and say, this is what I found. That's just what I expect you to do. And then we will buy it or we don't buy it. Now, what does a 300K person do? 300K person says, all right, I'm going to take ownership of this, but I'm not going to try to do it by myself. I'm going to go interview everybody here that's going to have to use this hardware and ask them, what do you need from the next hardware refresh that we do? What are your requirements? And then I'm going to ask the person who bought the last hardware or whoever works in finance that is paying the maintenance contract and say, how much is the maintenance contract? Right? Do we really need to be buying any new hardware at all? Then I'm going to go find out, what is the hardware deprecation policy at a cloud provider like Google? Why did they go from replacing hardware every 3 to 5 years and moving it closer to 5 to 7? What was the science behind that? Is hardware really more reliable? I'm
Hmm.
going to take all of that and write a 2 or 3 page document about the way I'm thinking about purchasing this new hardware, calling 3 vendors, including the one we already use, getting insight from everybody at the company. I'm finding the person that hate on everything. What about this? What about that? I want you to look at that doc and tear it up, and I'm going to address everything. And you still may not be happy, but I'm glad you poked all the holes in it. And I'm going to start small and make sure that everybody's voice is there. Now, at the top, where you put your name, make sure you put your name and date at the top so nobody can get confused about where the strategy came from. If you're really senior, you're going to have 3 more names underneath, which is all the co-founders of the people. You want that this becomes our project. And he asked you, like, Kelsey, man, every time I propose something, all the people that have been there for a long time be like, no. I said, the reason why they're saying no is because they know what your trajectory is. You ain't going to be here more than 2 years. You're going to realize that you got a lot more skills than they willing to pay for, and you're going to move on, rightfully so. So what you got to do is you got to attack all these projects, not as your project, but as our projects.
Hmm.
And once it becomes our project and you know that everybody got to get on board and it's going to take time, but then they know it's ours. So even if you do leave, then it's ours. If you make a mistake, then it's ours. And when you're not in the room, the other co-founders are like, oh, hold on. We vetted this. We did everything. We, not he, we.
Hmm.
And then if you get it done and you move it over the finish line, everybody feel like they done leveled up in that process. People know you're a team player, but you can lead. Things get done. People can trust you. And
Hmm.
everybody feel like they had an input on the say. That's a 300K move.
All right.
And he was like, man, I never thought about it. Same kind of work, just more strategic, more inclusive, and a little bit more big picture thinking.
Yeah, it
And it's
sounds like.
also, Tamika, I'm sorry. This is also leverage that people don't understand because you've leveraged your situation. And when you start going up and doing that big thinking, that's a different type of leverage. And people are not understanding that you have the tools that you need right there. And again, what you're saying is paying attention. If you pay attention and dial in, and as we say, be the solution, that comes in different levels. There's always something going on. And as you follow the business, it's all about the bottom line.
Mm.
What you tell us all the time is impact. What is the impact? What does that impact to their revenue?
And also impact to the team, right? Because you got to have like, and to me this kind of goes like to design thinking, even though they use it for GUIs and so forth, UI UX, it's still the same thing, right? It's still you're creating, you're coming up with something, but you got to have buy-in from the team, and it also has to have an impact for the team and possible for the customer as well too, right? Because if we spend time doing this and it doesn't help the bottom line, it doesn't change the how the team or improve the team, then the team is not going to be in for it. And I want to add one more thing too. The other part of this that's not talked about is convincing team members that don't want to listen is a hard job. And the reason why I say it's a hard job is because you have to spend time understanding how they listen and communicate at their level to get the buy-in from them as well. And that's an art to me. That's what I've
I
seen.
mean, the thing is, you most people are actually kind of born with this part, right? Like when you're a little kid and you're trying to make friends at the playground, you understand how different people are, and you gravitate towards one group versus another. If you deal with a bully type situation, you know how you got to deal with that. If you play in sports, you may have to put on a different hat to deal with that. And so I think a lot of people do understand a little bit this in the outside world. Now, when it comes to business, you're right. You got to understand that the same personalities exist in a particular company. And I think you got to understand that that's that softer side of the skill set that comes in. And people keep saying soft, even though it's another skill that is probably harder
Hmm.
than whatever you type on the keyboard is. But I think it's that component where you got to know that that's what's happening. You know it's going to be required. And for me, I chose the inspire them mode, right? You know,
Hmm.
you get around a person like, I don't think we need to do that. It's kind of dumb. What we got work already. I was like, you right. The thing we have, it do work, honestly, because that's where I got these ideas from, using the thing we have. But let me just show you some, right? Here's how our thing works. And the reason why I always start by showing them how our thing works, because I want them to understand that I actually appreciate and I've taken the time to learn how the current thing works. And I'm going to tell you how this worked in the real world for me. I think year 6 or 7 of my tech career, I was working in financial services and they got mainframes at that time. This is like 2012.
Hmm.
And a lot of people were just like, oh, mainframe, laughing at it. It's outdated, it's old school. And I'm like, look, it's what we got. I'm just want to, let me just learn it. And they over there doing COBOL. And I'm looking at this like, this COBOL? And then when you look at it from a, like I want to learn it because I had to learn it first before I can start building a new system. And they
Hmm.
were teaching me about pack decimal, epsidic, these formats, like fixed link fields and why it's faster to walk a binary format. Like you can just shift over 16 bytes and grab the credit card number in one operation, which was really fast on the mainframe versus weighing 10,000 cycles on Java and an Intel CPU.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, no one. So that's why we can crunch all of this data with one mainframe and we struggling with 50 servers. How is this possible? So they was teaching me everything. I'm looking up on Wikipedia. I learned how to write a little COBOL. So, okay, I now I understand. So when I started to make the new solution, which was in Python, the first thing I had to do was create a packed decimal library.
Hmm.
So I went to Wikipedia. What is packed decimal? For those that don't know, when you write the number one, that takes a whole byte in most computer architecture. And so if you want to express a whole set of credit card digits, you're going to use a certain amount of memory. Most people don't
Hmm.
think about memory, but in the mainframe, memory is
It's
expensive.
expensive.
So when you can express a number with half the bytes, a nibble, you can pack in numbers in half the space. Less data to transfer. So if you're trying to process all the transactions from Walmart at night, wouldn't it be better to get a 10 gig file instead of a 20 gig file? And so that was some of the benefits. I'm learning all of these things. So I make the packed decimal library. So when I had to present to the people that were doing that work, I was like, here's how we currently do it. Thank y'all for teaching me COBOL. Thank you, John. Thank you, blah. Thank you, blah. It's like, okay, Kelsey respecting the game,
Right.
right? I'm respecting the game.
You're not
And
going
then
over
here's what I
nobody's
learned from
head.
y'all. Yeah,
Yeah.
here's what I learned from y'all. I made a packed decimal library. So let me show you what we can do now. We can do it in Python. What does that mean? That means a whole new group of people that know Python can come help write some of these batch jobs instead of having to put everything on the mainframe. And it felt more inclusive. A lot of people felt like, yo, we part of this story. And so they saw themselves part of the solution. They teaching us COBOL so we don't miss anything. We got the new library so we can bring everybody together, and that's how we did it. So that's what I mean by that nuance and your strategy to bring people on board. And yeah, bonus points that I wrote some libraries in Python and shipped a new thing, but the story is way more impactful when you include other people.
Correct. Now, with that impact that you have on that team and creating a new app, how have you taken the lessons? Like we had the good time stories, right? What are the hard lessons or the letdowns that you have had in your career? Maybe caused by you or maybe caused by someone else. What are the lows? We always talk about the highs, but what are your lows that you have had?
For me, the lows is how you get to the highs. So to me, like once you realize like that mistake in production gives you the experience necessary to not probably make the exact same mistake again. So once you get over the embarrassment or whatever, it's like the first disappointment was you do all that kind of work and raises go out. You get the same 3% as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And you like, hey, oh, whoa, whoa. We know he ain't doing it. Not throwing nobody under the bus, not to be mean,
Right.
but we know he not doing it.
We know the Cabbage Patch Kid over there ain't doing that.
How? So how you know he got 3%? Because he told me at lunch. I thought I got it was called a performance bonus. Don't you need performance to get the bonus? Like so, what is it? And so I think that was kind of the first thing I learned is that if you look at most companies and the salary bands, there's special case. Some companies do focus. Like one thing I liked about Google, they focused on performance and they paid for performance. So the delta between those that was doing okay and those that were excelling, the pay kind of matched that. But most companies, it's not like that. In most companies, the best performers probably getting no more than 10 or 15% than somebody else that just kind of doing okay, but not exceptional. So that
Mm-hmm.
was the first kind of letdown. The one that I really remember and helped me really work on my presentation game. When I joined Puppet Lab, so I came from that financial institution where I learned COBOL, put Puppet in production. I spoke at PuppetConf. So this is why I think conference is so important. Remember, I'm working in financial services, all the regulation, all the things, and I had to spend 2 years to get Puppet in production, grinding, convincing people, working with InfoSec, staging,
Mm-hmm.
UAT, product. Like it's not fast when you're working at a real company making real money.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, look, I'm grinding, I'm doing my thing. And I was like, man, I'm gonna go speak at PuppetConf. That was my first conference talk at outside of a local meetup.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go to PuppetConf and I'm putting everything into this one. And I do this talk, and then while I was there, they was like, hey, do you want to interview with the engineering team? Because guess what? I was doing open source contributions before then, fixing little things here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the job. So I come back and I say, hey, they're like, Kelsey, how was the conference? I was like, it was amazing. But also, I quit because I couldn't go work at Puppet. And my manager was cool. He was like,
It kind of saw the writing on the wall.
well, he said no. He said we knew you. We knew we were gonna keep you forever. So I go to Puppet. So I'm working in Atlanta. I'm working remote for this company based in Portland. So I'm like, man, I'm finally working at the tech company that's making things happen in my space. And so one of my first projects as an engineer was to integrate Puppet modules. So instead of you just downloading Puppet code and put it somewhere in your file system, we were gonna build a package manager so that it would be fully integrated. So the Puppet module tool is like outside, and then you have to do all kind of work to make it work. So I'm at the house. I'm finna kill these boys. I'm finna merge the two. I got it hot, everything working good. I get on the airplane in Atlanta, Hartsville, Jackson. I fly 4.5 hours to Portland. I'm like, they're not gonna be ready for your boy in the morning. We finna do the engineering demo. I said, I'm gonna show it to y'all. And I do the live demo, and I'm like, they ain't talking because I killed them. That's what I was thinking on this when I was up there. But they was not talking because they was like, this is dumb. Why are we even doing this? I thought we agreed that this not gonna ever work. So why are we wasting time with it? And I'm just standing there like, what? It obviously works. I mean, it got more work to do before it's production ready, but it's definitely not like we just need to throw this away. And so at that moment, I was like, damn, this is what it's really like in the tech game, where you take initiative, you step up, you think what's needed, you figured out something that would be impactful, and your own team, the people you kind of been respecting all this time, is just like, nah, this trash, like in front of everybody. And you kind of feel alone in that scenario. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember it was the UX director, his name was Randall, bald head, long goatee. Whatever you think about someone in Portland that rides bikes and does craft beer, it's probably this guy. And I remember Randall just got up. He was like, F them. That was dope. And he said, don't be afraid of your own power. So I kept working on that project. And it was hard getting people to work on it because they was like, it's trash. You know, nobody said that they want to support it. So I got a small team And I remember now it's like my first time as the team lead, or at least in that capacity at a smaller company where every move matters. You don't get 6 months anymore. You
Correct.
get a couple weeks.
Couple of weeks,
And I
30
remember,
days.
yeah, the two engineers was fighting. They didn't even like each other. I'm like, I don't even know how to deal with this. Like, y'all don't like each other. What's that got to do with what we working on? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember the engine manager was like, hey, you quoted this project would be done in X amount of time. That time has passed. And I remember I just fell on the sword. That's like, you know, it's my fault. And the engineering manager was like, Kelsey, I know it's not your fault. I know the two people in the squad don't even like each other. I said, you know what, though? I don't have time to get into that. So for now, it's my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me deal with it how I'm going to deal with it now, understanding that this is my fault. I can't be blaming everybody else because there's something I can do. So I just asked one of them, one of y'all just got to bounce. It don't matter who it is, but one of y'all, it ain't going to work, but this needs to get done. But you know what? When the team saw me fall on the sword like that, they stepped up and we got it done. We finally got it done. They brought in a product manager and we made it an official project and it became the Puppet Forge, right? It's something that probably still exists to today.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the part where I would find like, man, you can do all this stuff that we giving advice about, but it ain't no guarantee that you're just not gonna put yourself out there and get shot down with arrows,
Correct.
right? This doesn't always have a happy ending. And look, I'll tell you, I've deleted people production Kubernetes clusters by mistake. Like seriously, I remember in cloud, somebody texted me, I knew him, company worked there. He's like, hey Kelsey, we having problems with Kubernetes. Can you help? And look, I don't work in support, but I was like, you know what? Let me get you, here's my credentials. Let me log in. And for some reason, this person made me like the admin of their
The
production cluster. I don't know why you do that.
kingdom. The
Yeah,
kingdom.
I don't need all of that. So I get in, I'm kubectl, Here's the problem. You back. He's like, thank you, Kels. Oh, above and beyond. So 4 or 5 months go by, and I'm cleaning up clusters. I'm like, why I got all these clusters running in my GCP account? I don't need these. Select all, delete. Buddy hit me up, was like, hey, bro, our cluster is gone. I said, it's gone? This production? He was like, yeah. I was like, damn, bro, that might have been me. I wasn't checking because I was like, I'm just select all. And so imagine that you delete somebody's whole production, bro. And
Right.
I was like, yo, my bad. He was like, you know what? It's our fault for having you admin credentials because you couldn't did that yourself. But it was still kind of my fault because you're supposed to check and verify
Right.
what's happening. So yeah, whatever pager duty, whoever's on call, my bad.
It was me. It was me. It
It
was
was me, bro. Sorry, my bad.
But infrastructure as code come into play.
No, infrastructure and code cannot prevent from that. Infrastructure. Let's just
Well,
walk
I'm
through it.
saying you can get
You
it back.
terraform it. Now he brought it back though. Yeah, you're
He
right.
can he get it back. He can
He
get it
had to run
back.
that terraform though.
He did. He had to run
But think about them
Terraform.
7 minutes before he hit me up. He
Oh
probably was
yeah.
like, "Damn, what happened?"
What did we get hacked?
panic. Panic.
Yeah, that's what you say when you don't know. So I think we got hacked. It's like, man, shut up, man. I deleted the cluster, bro. Ain't nobody who hacks us and deletes the cluster is the first line. Come on, bro. It's me. My bad.
I did it.
Did we get hacked? It's the first thing we think about. I'm sorry. We like, well, who's the last person to log in? Let me go check the logs. Who logged in?
I
Oh
do
no.
remember being in the, when you work in a common enterprise, they got the war room. Something
Hmm.
happened, everybody get in the room. Y'all know how it go.
Yeah.
And so this dude, he a DBA. He you know how sometimes you add a column, remove a column. And one of these operations took a long time. So you remove the column. If you got a big Oracle database, this can take a long, long time to the point where database might not even be operable. So he did it one time. They was like, hey, bro, look, you can't do that again, bro. Like, there's too many times. Like, you just need to be more calculated in what you're doing. And I remember one time he dropped the table. Like, again, he just deleted the table. And you saw that, back then you looking at the monitoring observability, like Nagios, just everything going red.
Hmm.
And we looked over and we saw him. So typically, if this is like your first or second time, you kind of explain yourself. This was like the fourth or fifth time in a short amount of time.
Hmm.
He just closed the laptop, put his badge on the table, and went to the crib. He's like,
It's
I
over.
already know I'm done.
I'm not going to even play games with you all. So back
He was
out the
like,
door.
we don't need to do no retrospective.
No, blameless.
Laptop closed, take the badge off, put it on top, but you go to the house. So I was
Yeah,
like, yo, when it gets to that point, that's all you can do.
right. And I've had my things that I've done before too. Like, I've had things that I've deleted, production. But again, I'm one of the ones that I'm kind of OCD. I back up anything first before I delete it. Or I get everything together before it's out of there. And so if I delete, they come holler, what happened? Yeah, let me restore that. Let me put that back to where how long ago? Well, you had a lot of data. That's my favorite ones because a lot of stuff like especially when you're on the DoD side, you may be working with stuff that's like 2-3 terabytes. You on prem, you got to restore that. You gonna be there
But
forever.
I think it's such a big part of what we do with software. Like when you're a software developer, which is very different than like ops, in my opinion, because when you write software, it work in testing, it work in dev, it work in all the lower environments. But then it get to production, it's something you never calculated. It just goes down. And then
Hmm.
people are like, what's wrong? It's like, if you think I knew the answer to that, that I
Will
would have
it be
shipped.
down?
I don't know. We finna look at the logs to figure out too, right? Like
Together.
we gonna yeah, together we are confused.
Together.
Yeah, and I think that's just part of the
Collectively.
game because if you didn't have that part of the game, most people just couldn't do this. It just wouldn't
Hmm.
work. And
Hmm.
I remember that same company. There's a dude. He was so scared to run the script. You know how you got scripts to do stuff, and he was just looking at us like, "What are you doing, bro?" He was like, "Man, I don't want to hit enter." And I remember I just hit enter for him. I was like, "Man, go, man. What are you doing? If it break, we just gonna fix it." And he was like, "Why'd you do that?" I was like, "Man, if it break, we go. At some point, you're gonna have to press enter, right? Before we leave, you're gonna press the button. So let's just press it now, and then we'll fix it
Rip
if it
off
breaks." He
the
was just looking at me like, "That's
band-aid.
irresponsible."
You out here giving people heart palpitations and making them lose their hair.
Well, you see what
We
happened
all
to
gonna
me.
be on this. We gonna be on this bridge call all afternoon. Who did it?
Hold on, let me charge my laptop. We can keep going. I can hear you.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. And everybody, thank y'all for coming out and joining us tonight. We got 77 people watching. Make sure you get the likes up. We appreciate all the super
We got
chats.
questions too. See if there's some questions. Y'all
Yeah,
keep them super chats
No,
going, man,
no,
yeah.
because it's going to a
I'm
good
reading.
cause.
No one has any questions. They are just really like in here, just commenting and chatting amongst each other and cracking up at these stories
Uh,
because it is so real,
well,
and everybody is like,
let me get a shout outs. Professor Black
every,
Ops, we appreciate you. Your $20 super
yes,
chat. Chester Kennedy, appreciate you for joining the 300K earners. Go back and watch all the shows for the 300K earners. We those stay private for you all. We drop all those gems over there to make sure you all are progressing forward in your careers and so forth. Keep it techie. Appreciate you. Saw you on PBO. Glad you could join us. I see you pumping out classes. I see you pumping out information on MySQL, your Linux course, and a whole bunch of other courses. I appreciate you. Even your Rocket Linux course. I watch them. Jason Grant, appreciate you. And also put where you what where how y'all find us. Did y'all get us from find us from Kelsey's tweet or retweet? If you're coming from a Slack or if you're coming from a Discord or whatever, put in the chat how you found us. All right, real Dub. What's up? What's up, Dub? Dub 21. How you doing? We appreciate you. $20 super chat. Steve Ops, what's going on? We appreciate you too. And your $20 super chat. Yeah, drop your questions in here. We want to make sure that you
and
all
also
got
keeping techie. Thank
yeah.
you so much for your super chat, and Sadie, as far as a new member, welcome as well.
Yep. Make sure you drop your questions in there. CTO advisor, I see you out there, man. How you doing? I think you was at the supercomputing conference. It was here in Denver. I didn't get a chance to go, but I logged in virtually and because I was supposed to go, but I had just got back from KubeCon and I was like, I don't need to walk no more. I don't need to walk no more. I'm over it. I needed a break. I needed a break. Erica Williams put you on. Okay, cool. Tech Tuesday, so we appreciate you. Yep. And you said you got your YouTube notifications. I got you. I got you. All right, Kelsey, you back. You got your laptop because you was about to go down. You was about to delete another cluster.
Hey, I was at 6%, and I was like, "How much time that get me?" I was like, "Let me stop playing, plug up."
All right.
Somebody else I know does that. Like, ooh, ooh,
Hey,
like you just want to give us a
we
struggle stream.
we're battery testing. We tested the battery. We want to see how far we can get.
She said, "The struggle stream."
Just want us to struggle stream. That's it. That's it. She like, it's 30 miles to the job. I got 33 gallons in the tank.
I can make it. All right. We got one question that came in from Steve Ops. Steve Ops says this is for new people tech. If you had to do it all over, Kelsey, where would you start right now to Kubernetes mastery, or would you suggest another path?
I mean, I don't see how I don't start the same way I did because just where I was. But if I was starting right now today, I'm going to probably look at the market just to see the companies I would like to work at. And I remember when I first started, I wasn't looking at the Googles. I wasn't looking at the Netflix. I just wasn't looking at that. I was looking at where can I drive to or catch the MARTA because your money may not be like
Were they
that. So
around? Were they
I mean, they
big
around,
then?
but not everywhere, right? I'm having empathy for people that's in Iowa. You got people all over the country that may or may not be able to, and they got the return to office policies going real hard right now. So,
Correct.
we got to be realistic about what's happening today. But I
Right.
would try to figure out a way, like, so for example, I'm not taking nothing off the board. I'm not taking tech support off the board. I'm not taking Best Buy Geek Squad off the board because my mentality at that time, and I think it still is today, I just got to get into the tech game, however, by all means necessary. So let's say I'm at the Best Buy Geek Squad as because I need my revenue.
Hmm.
And I go to Geek Squad, I'm like, yo, I want to be fixing Macs, anything. I'll work on anything that's related to computers. I'm saying I'm starting out, right? I don't know much. Now I got me some revenue coming in. I'm kind of in the tech arena. I don't mind making house calls, whatever I got to do. So now that I got my foundation, so we can only improve from here.
Right.
So now what we doing? So now I'm like, okay, what's popping? What is Best Buy Corporation doing? Are they in the cloud? Where the e-commerce site running? Oh, GCP? Okay, maybe I go get me a GCP cert. Or I'm gonna maybe go get the cert. What's this cloud thing, right? So the reason why I'm gonna probably still go with the cert situation is because I felt like it's a guided learning path. Like I know there's many ways to learn in boot camps, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like getting a book knowing that someone has thought about the skills, someone's done some assessment, and I just need that confidence boost to get that piece of paper. And now I got me a little credential. So I'm gonna probably start to do that. So I'm still at Geek Squad,
Mm-hmm.
doing my support, and then knowing what I know now, that's such a big skill how to troubleshoot anything.
Yep.
Diagnostic port, serial port, rebuilding, reflashing, data recovery, all of these skills remain the same no matter what you're working on. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I get my troubleshooting and debugging skills. The philosophy, I would have learned way more about the philosophy of these things because I
Mm-hmm.
think it really helps you kind of become an expert when you get into a new domain. You can approach it the same. So now I got my cloud cert in hand. I'm at that same company. I'm going to let it be known. My aspiration is to go work for a corporate. I want to go work on the cloud platform because all these systems we using every day to record customer information, that's on a cloud system. And guess who is best equipped to make it better? The person who used it before. So on my resume, hey, I work with these systems every day as an associate in Geek Squad. The thing I don't like about it, here's my drawing, the UI, it needs to be improved. We have to click 5 times just to get to the customer order. We got to put this over here. We got to do double data entry here. And I got my cloud cert, so I kind of know how it works on the back end. I might mess around with a little prototype, like how to make a better front end using something React based or Next.js, maybe a little database. But I'm going to try to move up at that particular company first because I have an advantage that other people don't.
Mm-hmm.
So my resume is going to be working towards that. I'm going to look at all the skills that Best Buy Corporate is hiring. So GCP, what database does this thing run behind? Oh, it's Postgres. Let me go learn me some Postgres. I'm just going to try to give myself any advantage I can. Now, hopefully, I would try to get to that next level within Best Buy because that's a world that I know. I'm already making progress in that lane. Here's the thing that I know: if I become a systems engineer at Best Buy, that opens up all the stuff in retail. Target, Walmart, Amazon is a retailer,
Hmm.
and it happens to also be a cloud provider. So I can parlay this Best Buy situation to these other situations. So that's how
Hmm.
I'm mapping it out. So let me try to get on there. And then what so here's my rule. Kubernetes is cool,
Hmm.
but what's more important is what the company's currently using.
Correct.
So if they're using Nomad, then I'm gonna learn Nomad. If they're using Terraform, I'm going. When I say learn, y'all not understanding what I'm saying. I'm saying, why did Mitchell create Terraform? I need to be able to have an answer to that question. What were people doing before Terraform? Why should
Hmm.
you not use Terraform? Can I write HCL, the Terraform configuration language, with confidence?
Hmm.
You know what? I might contribute to Terraform. I'm gonna start with the documentation. You know how some documentation terrible and out
Yep.
of date? I'm gonna go contribute upstream. So that's the way I would do it as a realistic, pragmatic path. And that doesn't mean that I don't have aspirations to go work at other tech companies or other companies in the game. It's just that I'm gonna hedge my bets in multiple ways to make sure I'm making progress on where I'm at and then setting myself up for where I wanna be.
Yeah.
Correct.
I say bloom where you plant it. And that's the advice we give out all the time. Like, do you know the company that you work for has a tech department? Have you made contact with anybody in there? Have you looked at the website, HR? What are the learning paths in there? What are the job opportunities? Go meet somebody. That's what you need to do. I'm so glad you said that. So
Yeah.
glad.
And the other thing I'll add on to that, if well, I'll answer that question. Let me say it that way. Would I change what I did? No. Um, it's ironically, people laugh when I say learn Linux, but it's kind of like this because I don't look at Linux like the operating system. I look at it like it gives me a baseline of fundamentals, meaning in the Linux curriculum, you learn about containers, you learn about firewalls and security. So you learn about networking, and on top of all of that, you learn how to manage the operating system and the processes as well too. So you get fundamental skills because you're gonna have to troubleshoot something because something's not gonna work or you're not gonna follow directions correctly, and you're gonna take that and you're gonna add on to that. Now, when we look at companies, and I talk about this on Tech Stocks and Jobs, people laugh, but you hadn't heard about Kroger and Publix and New York Life, and you hadn't heard about them laying off. All the insurance companies, New York Life, Mass Mutual, you hadn't heard about layoffs from them. And guess what? You don't think they use AI, data, a database, anything security, anything that's related to any of the tech fields or tech conferences. They utilize all of those things.
Massive data.
Yeah. So
One one thing
go
I want to
ahead.
add to Steve Ops question here is that why would you learn Kubernetes? So I'm gonna put a little spin on it, like because this I don't think this question is just for new people in tech. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's for everybody in tech. Because remember, Kubernetes didn't come out until I was what
20.
32, 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, it was new to everybody, including me at the age of 33, and I had already been in the game for 10 plus years. So, all right. So now, why would you learn it? So whether you're new to the tech game in general, or you're new to Kubernetes in general, or it's just time for you to learn a new skill, why would you do it? And I think this gets back to the fundamentals. So when you look at Kubernetes, the question I like to ask now is why does it even exist? Not is it better than every other tool? That's not as
Right.
important as that question. And so Kubernetes exists. Why? Because using Linux directly, especially in a cloud environment, is probably not the best you can do given all we've learned in the last 15 years of operating cloud systems.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get Docker. Okay, Docker adds a nice layer above Linux. Not that you don't need to know Linux, but it just adds a nice layer to
Mm-hmm.
just leverage what Linux has to offer. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. But Docker by itself, as a runtime, doesn't solve the cluster problem where I got multiple zones and regions. That's a slightly different API. You got service discovery, load balancing. You got lots of things that it's not the right layer to have at Docker or Linux. So then
Mm-hmm.
you get this kube layer. And so when you start to be able to piece together this heritage of how we get here, you will realize that Kubernetes is like a checkpoint. It's a checkpoint on the previous decade.
Mm-hmm.
So Kubernetes sounds new, but when you peel back the covers, it's a decade old techniques and technology that has been born again in open source, in some ways aggregated all into one nice package. So
Correct.
when you study Kube, so it's one thing to learn it, like how to install it. You run through a little Hello World tutorial. Nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's good entry point stuff. But when you go in with this philosophy about why it exists, I think it's going to really help you understand like, oh, either I can build my own platform, Ansible, Terraform, some glue code, or maybe an infrastructure library or SDK like Kubernetes is a better place to start in 2023 versus building our own system from scratch. So when I say, why would a smart company and capable company like Shopify or Spotify use something like Kubernetes when they can just build their own? That's the kind of question you ask when you go watch talks. I love the talks by the people who create the technology, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they're missing that production reasoning. Here at Shopify, here's why we used it versus our homegrown. And so that's the kind of stuff I want. So I would say, yeah, learn Kubernetes, but I want you to study Kubernetes, not just how to install it and how to just use it on the surface, but go understand why. And I think that's going to be the thing that's going to push you to that next level.
Right. So your next question is from TechRX is what are your thoughts on the implementation of quantum computing and AI and how the cloud might give access to quantum computing?
Quantum computing is theoretical, like
It
almost
is.
close to time travel. So if we had time travel, shit would be dope, wouldn't it? Right? You might go and mess up the universe like Loki, but
Mm-hmm.
it would be an amazing thing. In theory, it should be possible. So, quantum computing, we know that the current paradigm of architecture we have today, ones and zeros, can only take us so far. Now, here's the thing, we haven't reached the limits of what ones and zeros can do. That's what all this AI stuff is about. There is a belief with ones and zeros that we can create AGI. And depending on who you ask, that's going to be something that is as capable as you are. I don't really believe that, but that's where we think the logical conclusion of ones and zeros are. So we got decades and decades before we really fully tap into what everything ones and zeros can do. So there's that one line of thought. So the AI space is more about, so you got different branches of AI too. I want to make sure people understand. This is why I think the
Mm-hmm.
study is so important. When you use Google Maps and it does like location, shortest path, and prediction of where you should go and how fast you're moving,
Mm-hmm.
that is boring as AI. When you say, I'm here, how long will it take to get to there? It doesn't know. It's guessing. It's guessing based on a bunch of inputs. How fast are you moving? Your GPS coordinates, what it knows about historical routes and how long it took people to drive. And all of that yields this model. And that model can be used for route optimization.
Mm-hmm.
This is what UPS has been using. This is what you use every day in your iPhone. So all that AI ML isn't the future, that's the past. That's already here. Generative AI, that branch of AI, is very different, right? Where this thing is trying to generate human like content. Why is it so amazing and why people care about it? Man, think about video editing when you can generate the missing frames. Like you remember back in the day when you used Photoshop for the first time and you hit the magic brush and it cleans stuff up? Guess what? That was a form of ML for some people. Those filters you see on Snapchat, that's what that stuff is. Recommendation engines on Amazon. You bought this book, you should buy this other one. You've been exposed to this stuff for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, there's new features in it, but you got to be honest. The thing that's so appealing about AI, in my opinion, is more people want to take real world models. Like you walk around with a model every day, right? You have a model. Like if I go to the hood, I have a model of what the hood is. Where are
Mm-hmm.
we? We're on what side of Compton? Compton, California. Now, I'm not saying all of Compton, California is the hood, but if you told me I was in Compton, I'm finna recalibrate. Y'all, it's not, y'all know what I'm talking about. And then if I see a bunch of people that don't play for the Little League's football team wearing the same colors,
Mm-hmm.
We're going to recalibrate. So this is your model saying, hey, based on my training set, I'm going to behave different when I get here. So I'm predicting that I may want to drive the other way,
Right.
right? Now, I could be wrong. Maybe they was out, about to go to Bible study. They just happened to all want to wear blue rags in the back of their pocket on the way to Bible study. And my model was off. And if I'd known that, I might tune my model in the future, right? Because now I learned that they wasn't game banging. They was just going to Bible study. So now I
Hmm.
got to readjust and calibrate. The thing I'm interesting about AI is that people are hoping that all these fields that have been untouched by tech, we can take that model. So your doctor looking at an x-ray and telling you that you have a fractured rib or that's lung cancer, we're hoping that there's enough training data and knowledge that we can turn it into models and give everybody world-class healthcare, even for someone that can only get someone that's only 2 years out of radiology school. You may not have access to someone who's been doing it for 50 years. Is that fair? Could you use AI and turn the analysis of that into a model? And that may not be the best case, but the whole point is symbolic programming, if else then that. You can build websites, you can build shopping carts, you can build checkout experiences. But for the next level of computing, the way you and I interact with each other with natural language, where I can
Hmm.
give you a set of instructions and you have context about what we're trying to do and you make it happen, or you make an estimation on what I mean and you just do that. And if it's a high prediction, or I can just say, nah, the other one. That's what we're trying to do with computers. So this is why AI is fascinating, not because of what we can make computers do. AI was actually the first time I started to say, well, what am I capable of?
Hmm.
How does my mental model work? Why should I train myself and get better? And so I hope that when you think about AI being the future, I think the concept of human study and psychology is going to find its way into the computing domain. And now people who got real world expertise are about to find a path into tech in probably ways that wasn't appropriate before, because now we can take their expertise and probably translate it into a model. That's what I'm still checking for AI and expertise. And you can decide if you want to get on the infrastructure side or the model development side or whatever you want. And then quantum to me, again, is very cutting edge, but it's so cutting edge
It's
that,
there though.
I mean, it's there, but to do what? So let's
So
just test it. To do
Let,
what?
so one, let's start there. So we're already using quantum on batteries, right? We're already Mercedes is already using them, IBM is already using them. There are plenty of people that are using quantum from that perspective,
All
right?
right, so let's go through what they're using it for. Let's just be
Right.
very
No,
specific,
no
right?
problem, no problem. You want? Let me pull up my notes because you know I
You
got
could
them.
you got better pull up the receipts because
I got
so to me there's a
receipts.
couple of things. One is there are so many specialized tools. Like the U.S. military uses F-15s.
Hmm.
You don't need no F-15. You don't know how to fly no F-15.
But I can simulate an F-15. I can do a simulation to train people to fly an
What
F-15.
I'm saying is they've been doing that for decades with
They
no quantum
have,
computers.
but
I'm
that's
not
we're not.
saying that it's
Well,
not
no,
gonna
no,
come.
we're not talking about quantum. We just using your example of F-15. I'm
No,
with you,
I'm just saying is what quantum. I'm saying you should pay attention to any area you find interesting. 100%.
right?
But you
So,
still got to put it into the landscape of things.
but in order to get there, we got to have people that can help get there, and that's the trick for quantum, is that we don't have enough people with the enough skill sets for a baseline of it to
So
even
even before
bring
you
it
get to
forward.
quantum, we don't have enough people in theoretical physics.
That's
Forget
fine.
quantum, right? It's just one output from that space. But you're right. There has to be more people on the research side too, because there's a lot of research that we're not clear on how to implement yet. Because the
Hmm.
current path to quantum computing could be the wrong one,
It could
right?
be
The current path to quantum computing could be based on our current understanding of hardware. This is why you got to keep the thing below a certain degrees, or it's going to melt down and be unuseful. It decays over time. Why
correct.
does a quantum computer decay? And so I agree with you. Like I think there is a space that how many people should be looking at even theoretical concepts, and should we not optimize all of our time for practical, practitioner level set of concepts?
Right. And then the other side of that is sustainability, right? This is where you can use AI and quantum together. That's just another aspect of it. That's why I go back to the batteries. we go back to EV, and the last place is space. As much as we don't want to talk about it, and we're already doing quantum in space and satellites, and also using blockchain and satellites. But those are very niche. But it's not to say that it already doesn't exist, and we're just not in those areas where we know, like, what are the skill sets in order to be in that area. And that's one of the things that I'm saying. Okay, to me, AI is like, it's right now, 5 years, 10 years. I even put quantum in there probably about year 7, where people can now learn to say, okay, hey, I spent, I got a certificate. I went to MIT, or I went on edX.org, found a class that gave me a baseline idea of what it is. Now I can see that the actual need for it. And if I choose to go down that route, hey, I know it's funding over there for it. I can go down that route. If I want to go back and do AI, I could still go back and do that because I have the knowledge of that. But as we see, and like I said before, we were talking, November the 13th, the initiative came down from the White House. They're putting billions into getting the mass education in the United States for quantum. So to me, when I see stuff like that, it's like, okay, well, what are they seeing? What are they looking for people to do? And how can we get ahead of the curve, even if it's John or Tamika that's in the 6th grade or the 7th grade that learns about
100%.
quantum.
Now, I do agree
Right.
that, again, quantum is an output. A
Correct.
quantum computer is an output.
Right.
I think you're speaking also to like, we need more theoretical physicists.
Look,
We need people who are doing the type of research that leads to where we are today. And that starts a lot earlier in this chain. Like, this ain't code school
correct.
stuff. This
Right.
is like, there's a few institutions in the world that facilitate this kind of learning and education. There's a few companies in the world that are trying to tap into, use this stuff for material science and other things.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that's a very much an unexplored territory. I think you and I have talked in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks to always be late to something.
Correct.
You know, like a lot of time when you hear about a good investment scheme, it's probably a scam by the time you hear about it because you late. You know what I'm saying? You're too late to it.
Too
So
late.
I
Correct.
definitely agree with you is that there are things we know about today, but it's in some ways it's just being ignored as if it won't be a thing in the future. And
Correct.
so where's our investment in terms of skill set, foresight, analysis, and
Correct.
maybe it's an area you want to go bet on. So I agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, at least have the knowledge, right? You don't have to go master in it, but at least have the knowledge, and where can you get that at? So if it becomes an initiative at a company, or maybe you go work for a company where it's already an initiative, you could be at the forefront of what that looks like. This is just my thought process on that. Your next question is data scientist versus cybersecurity. Which bachelor degree is better for individuals new to tech?
I didn't go to college, so I can't tell you.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was like, Kelsey did not go to college.
Well, I've always been the type of person for a very long time is I want to be what they study. So so I think the key here though is remember Kubernetes comes out when I'm 33, 32. So there was no college for Kubernetes. So what's the best for somebody wanting to get into Kubernetes? Like it depends. Some people have already gone to college and going. Do you know how long it's going to take for Kubernetes to find its way into college and universities? I remember
Five
giving a
years.
guest lecture
More than
at
that.
Stanford University where they were studying Leslie Lamport, which is the person that talked about consensus algorithms, like how do you keep things synchronized by having consensus protocols? That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that lives in things like etcd, the database behind Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go there, they understand Paxos. They know who Leslie Lamport is, but they have never touched etcd with their hand. They never deploy Kubernetes to see how all of these things come together in practice when you introduce a high latency network or a misconfigured database and how that changes the theory and starts to lean towards practice. And what people are paying for, let's just be real. I need people with practice and experience. And if I had a choice to hire someone who got straight A's in college, a bachelor's degree, and no GitHub, and someone who's been working the same 4 years with GitHub and can show me some code and walk me through it, I know who I'm picking as a
Mm-hmm.
hiring manager because I need you to come in right now. Let's be honest, a lot of the stuff that we call tech, a lot of it's like practitioner work, like an
Correct.
electrician and a plumber. Don't think we very different than other practitioners in the world. Roughly similar skill set and expectations. So I would say this: if you go get a bachelor's degree right now, you go and get you a 4 year degree. You need to on the side maybe get an IT certification to complement your education.
Mm-hmm.
So the value of going to college, you going. So to me, when I see data scientists, make sure you take stats. You gonna be so happy you test statistics.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be a data scientist, get that macro and microeconomics to think about how data is used in the business world. Because you're going to be a data scientist, I promise you, most of the data scientists that are being hired, they're going to be probably being using their data science work for business outcomes, right? And so taking economics, you're going to learn a lot about how people think about these scenarios, the trade-offs, work input, opportunity costs, et cetera, et cetera. Learn a database. I don't care if it's Oracle or Postgres.
Correct.
Same thing with cybersecurity. For example, what's the purpose of security? For most people, you're not inventing anything. Most people are literally going to take some software package and try to configure it so it operates only the way that they intended, and they're going to observe in case it doesn't and try to patch the holes. That's what a lot of people will be doing. Now, there's advanced forms of cybersecurity where you got people who know how to exploit stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and you got people that know how to defend against people who exploit stuff. And I'm pretty sure there's some colleges that help you understand the fundamentals of some of that. But I promise you, when you get into that game, you need to go to these fringe meetups where people will be doing this kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
and learn a little bit from them. So all I'm saying is don't limit your education to the degree program of the one college you chose. That's unnecessary to do. It's 2023. So nothing wrong with college. I'm just being telling you right now, you never gonna stop learning. So when
Nope.
you graduate, you're gonna be responsible for continuing to learn, no matter how you start. And I would just say, don't sit. And I see it a lot when I talk to the kids that go to school. I'm not gonna learn nothing else until I graduate. Like, what are you doing? Don't do that.
Right.
Complement your education. Take control of it. So you got your nice fundamentals and baseline from college. Thumbs up, good job. But then go complement that with some side projects, some IT certifications, some meetups. So when you graduate in 4 years, you got a little bit of head start on just your peers that just did the basics.
I'm gonna come back and say, you say which one to learn. I'm say combine them. Data security. You're gonna always have a need to secure data across any platform, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's the cloud, whether it's on prem, whether it's a hybrid situation. I would be looking at if you have in cybersecurity, do they have a data class where it's inclusive of that or certification that you could take that involves data security, but you need to probably understand data on both sides of that security or data. So that's what I would be looking at because data security is the next 10 or 12 years. Data security in AI, data security in ML, data security in whatever platform is what I would do. Just my thoughts. All right. Does AI change where or how I should start? I guess start in tech, I'm assuming.
That's a good question because I can imagine. So think about the people that were still loading punch cards
Mm-hmm.
when magnetic tape came out. They probably looked at it as like, ain't nobody finna buy that. Look how expensive it is. I'm about to keep. You see how I paper clip this stack of punch cards? Ain't nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loading these things faster than anybody. I'll never drop them. So they killing it. So they may not be able to see it. Um, when I think about AI, again, I look at it from there are things that you can't do now that you'll be able to do. You. Like, for example, I'm not a video editor, but I remember loading up iMovies and you just put a filter on there and it's like, ooh, look at my stuff. It looks like a real movie now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is amazing. So a lot of people, AI may create more video editors because the tooling gonna be so good that even a novice is gonna be doing stuff that a pro couldn't do 15, 20 years ago. That's gonna be amazing. But I think the way to start to me is when it comes to AI, and I think this is one where I think people are gonna get themselves into trouble. If you're a software developer and you think programming is tab, autocomplete, whatever GPT say, and then ship it, you're gonna have a problem. Because when there's a bug or there's a problem with that output, you might find that this assistant, you relied on it too hard. And so your skills ain't where they are. So if you start with it, I think that's good. But to me, at least for me, I want to learn the fundamentals. What is the training set for the AI? So if
Mm-hmm.
I was learning Terraform, and let's say there was two ways to learn Terraform. One, next year, HashiCorp comes out with Terraform AI. You can just give it a prompt and it will write the Terraform for you. Now, somebody might say, damn, I'm just going to start with Terraform AI and I'm just going to learn the prompts. Now, one way to think about this is all that means is that Terraform just got a new API. Instead of just HCL, it
Mm-hmm.
just got a new API that you can do very similar things. But I remember one time when I was at CoreOS is hardcore engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Most people was writing stuff in C, C++, and mostly Golang. But I remember we was writing this project in Go. It's a project called Flannel, and the CNI
Mm-hmm.
driver, the network interface to Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we writing, I'm like, it's this, we knocking it out. I know Go, and the other dude, he didn't really know Go, but he knew C, and he learned Go pretty easy. And so we doing something. He's like, Kelsey, I ran into a bug with Go. There's a bug in the compiler. I was like, bro, you found a bug in the Go compiler? The odds of that is low. Just say you don't know Go, bro. It's okay. Just he was like, no, there's a problem. So I'm looking at the Go code. I said, I don't see it. He's like, you're looking in the wrong place. This dude ran the disassembler and he looked at the code that the Go compiler generated. He's like, this assembly is wrong. You can't do that when you're making a syscall. You're going to crash the system. I'm sitting there like, wow, okay. He fouls the bug and it's a legit bug. And they were like, yeah, only somebody with his skill set
Would know that.
to look at the disassembly. I'm like, wow, okay. And then I actually learned to get back to my basics too. Like, Kelsey, why does Go not use libc? Because they have their own implementation. And there's a consequence when you have threads,
Mm-hmm.
you can't start a system call. So for those that don't know, a system call is like file open. You tell the kernel to open this file and it's going to give you back an array of bytes. You can't start file open and then switch to another thread and think everything's going to work. Bad things can happen when you do that. So you have to stay where you are when you make these system calls. He found in the code they were not doing that. And it turns out this was a bug in Docker because they were
Mm-hmm.
using Go and they had the same problem. So this dude with his elite skill set, now for him, this fundamental stuff. When you write C, you need to know this kind of stuff. That's where he
Mm-hmm.
started. So to me, it's like, don't skip the low level because here's what I think is going to happen. AI might become the new baseline for everybody. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody out here is like, oh, I know how to use Terraform AI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the other person's going to be like, I know how to use Terraform AI and I can write HCL by hand. I can also troubleshoot the Terraform state file because
Correct.
sometimes things get corrupted in there. You got to be able to see it. They were like, yo, man, if I got to choose out of all y'all, I'm going to get the person that knows the AI stuff and
And
how it works underneath the hood. So I would say it shouldn't, but don't ignore the AI. So everything I just said, don't dismiss the AI part because it's going to become part of the toolbox. But don't let that excuse you from learning how to do it without the AI.
correct. And Miss CTO advisor says hi.
That's family right there. I love that.
All right, next one up. When I would say, when do you know when to leave when it seems like your team is truly now allowing you to grow as a junior? I guess as a junior person.
I get this one a lot actually. When people DM me on Twitter and we just pick up the phone And I try to put myself back in their shoes, so I just try to listen. And they say, hey, man, I'm on the team. They be hating. They be doing this. They be doing all of those things. I say, okay, cool. And I've been there, so I believe them. So I say, okay, now there's room for growth for you too.
Mhm.
Why don't they like you? Now, it's not your job to make nobody like you. It's not.
Mhm.
But there's some advantages when you figure out how to deal with those kind of people in a way where they stop doing what they're doing. So I always ask people, what could you do? Not that it's your responsibility, don't mishear me, but what can you do? Are you helpful? Are you helping people on their other stuff? Are you giving a shout out to other people when they do help you? I know some people that get help, but don't give no shout out to nobody. What do I mean by that? Let's be very clear. An engineer takes time out their day to help you get better at your job. You go on your one-on-one with your manager and you ain't mentioned this person name, none. They just giving you praise for growing in your talents. What you're supposed to do when nobody looking, say, you know what? Shout out to Jill over there. She took time to show me all of this. I mean, 2, 3 days. So I just want to
Mhm.
make sure Jill got a shout out. You can also do stuff like, hey, Jill, thank you for helping me yesterday on this particular issue. I feel much better at my job. Carbon copy her manager and your manager.
Mhm.
So Jill be like, oh, that's how Kelsey be moving. He make sure everybody get their credit. Okay, like so when you ask Jill, hey Jill, you help me with this other thing? Oh, yes, because I know how that's gonna play out, and a lot of people like that. So maybe you're doing that and you're still stuck in a situation, but that's what I mean. Like, are you actually demonstrating the behavior proactively that you wish other people was following? For most people, when you start to really get into the nitty gritty details, they not. They just assume I'm junior. Everybody supposed to come in and help me do something. But some people not trying to invest in people they don't think is worth helping. To be honest,
Mhm.
sometimes there's that, or you haven't broken the ice. So I try to figure out what makes people tick. So if I was on a team like that, right, and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, trying to help people with, say, hey, do you need any help with anything? Is there something I can help with? You might do something like, yo, man, I ain't really doing nothing this weekend. So if somebody on call, I'll take your rotation. You taking rotation? Like, yeah, bro. I mean, I ain't really doing nothing. Wife finna go out of town, so I know I hate on call. So I'm gonna take somebody rotation. It's like, damn, bro. I'm finna try to go to the Lakers game. I was gonna take the laptop with me. So if you don't take it, I'm gonna rock to the Lakers game. Say, great. Now, when I need help with these Jira tickets,
You should be front and center.
bro, how was the Lakers game? Wow. Okay. Yeah, LeBron showed out. With that out the way, let's talk about these Jira tickets. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you got to create leverage. So to me,
Right.
if I did all of that, now we got to go to the second strategy.
Right.
Can I go to a different team at the same company? Given that I tried everything to be a part of this team, letting people know what I need from the team, maybe my manager or the team leads just say, hey, I really like this team. I think it's challenging. I'm willing to step up from the challenge. Here's what I've been doing, but here's what I need. I need a little bit more collaboration from the other people on the team, and I'm willing to take some feedback on how to make that easier to do. If that don't work, then I'm always keeping one eye out what the market is doing because it maybe it's time to switch up. I've left companies because I didn't like the team I was on. I tried everything, it's run its course, and I'm out of there. But the thing I do not want to do is leave before I learn the details about how it is to operate on a bad team and potentially turn it around. I want the opportunity to have that skill because the next company I go to, I might find myself in the same situation again. Then what?
Correct.
Right. And I want to add to that. Also, when we talk about, paying attention, also, why aren't people available? There was a change in business where their work got redistributed, reassigned, and everybody's just kind of head down working on their stuff, catching up. Like that's very important as well. And in those cases, asking if there is any busy work that you can do within that because people are in their own lanes at the end of the day. And I'm sharing this with you because I'm on a new project and there's been a lot of business stuff that everything is heads flying. I make sure I check in, but also it's like, okay, I know why everybody's not tapped in. and okay, and so in that I'm going to make sure whoever who's my team lead, I'm going to tap in and let them know what I'm doing on a daily basis so they don't forget about me, and that they know that I'm still earning my check even though they know everybody's busy. This is what I've worked on, A, B, C, and D, and is this the right direction for me? Should I pivot to something else? What's going on? So you need to speak up for yourself as well and ask questions, and not assume that they are not working on with you because they don't like you, or whatever story that you've probably made up in your head about what's really going on, and be your own advocate for that.
You know what's
I'm
cold about that? I I don't know about y'all, but I like to clean up. I mean, I like wash dishes, fold clothes. My mama taught me how to fold towels like they do at Macy's. You got the
mhm,
triple fold, be tight. You
mhm.
don't want nobody else to. If you're not gonna make it tight, like I got it, I got you. Just give me the clothes basket. And you know how sometimes you walk around the crib and you don't clean the kitchen. I'm talking about you
The
clean the stove, you moving elements off, you clean it underneath, and somebody go in there and make a grilled cheese and just leave it. You know what I'm saying? You'd be like, yo,
the
what
disrespect.
that in your mind. But to your point, they could have had to go do something you asked them to do. You said you told them to go to pick up your package before the place closed. That's why they had the dip so they can get there on time. So one thing I've been trying to do is just have a little bit of empathy and just say, hold on for a second. There might be a reason for this, and so I just be quiet because as a parent, you be wanting, why is this still here? You know what I'm saying? But so sometimes you just be quiet, you chill. Person come back and it's in the dishwasher because they also understood it shouldn't be there. They just didn't have the time to do it right then. And I,
Mhm.
I kind of learned that sometimes you just got to be cool, chill out for a second, and just don't jump to the conclusion too early. And it could be a day, it could be a week. And so I think that is so important. That part you just mentioned about empathy and understanding the big picture and not just your situation.
Now I'm gonna come in with my lawnmower and wreck all y'all. Right. So here's what my thought process would be on that question: is have you learned anything skill wise in that job? And the skill could be quote unquote soft or technical. And if you have reached the maximum capacity of what you think that you have learned, you should be able to put that down on your resume and put fillers out on your resume. Put that out and put your resume out and put fillers out there and start interviewing. But the other part of that is also as well is learning from the person that is hardest to work with on that team. Set up a one-on-one with that person. Go through and look at their code and how they write stuff and ask them why they did something this certain way. Here's what you get a chance to do. You get a chance to leverage their thought process. You get a chance to leverage why they did something. But not only that, you get a chance to say, I never thought about it this way. Now I got it. And you can take that as something as a skill that you learn. But it has to be the person that gives you the hardest time because it's something that person sees in you or doesn't see in you. And the reason why I'm choosing that person is because I want to leverage something that they may have that you didn't know. And it may not be anything, but I usually try to set up a one-on-one with that person. Now, if the person doesn't show up, you got your answer. you
Mhm. And
you
this
got your
and it
answer.
might be it might be early in the morning. It may be way after hours, making yourself available because everybody's not working 9 to 5. Do you go that extra mile? Do you pop up when your team lead is just on there at the end of the day, just trying to tighten up their stuff? And do they have a quick moment to chat with you? Like, you have to be able to, shake and move within within those positions, because a lot of people are of the mentality of, I have mine, now you got to get yours. And they're going to put you in into this boot camp in their mind that you don't necessarily know about, because you've been told that tech is this type of way and it's on the job training, and you're going to do all these things. It's going to be the
Yeah.
opposite of
Well,
everything that you were taught.
speaking of which, let me ask you that, Kelsey. Do you think that tech is on the job training? Do you think people need to come in with the mindset that they're going to learn on the job, or should they have skills before they get there?
Well, I mean, for me, I always, I played sports growing up, and so of course that's why they call it a coach. Teams have coaches. You got trainers. So you would
Mhm.
expect that if a coach has a playbook, they're going to coach us through the playbook. I expect, I mean, it's a team, right?
Mhm.
And there's a game has structure and rules, and we want to play a certain way. So I do expect the coach to have its own, or the team to have its own identity, and you got to train towards that. But if you play sports before at any level, you got to make sure you come right. You got to make sure you get your
Mhm.
rest. You got to make sure you got your grades together so you can play. And then when you outside of the structured game, you at the park. You also hooping and trying new things out to see if you can improve your game. Because at practice, you may not have enough time at practice to try. And plus, if you in practice and you doing extra, the coach like, what is that? You know what I'm saying? You try a little crossover because you saw it on the N1 mixtape. The ball go out of bounds. Coach is like, what are you doing? That's not the time to be trying something new at practice all the time because they may just want you to run with the fundamentals that the team has. So a lot of times people are perfecting this stuff outside of work. And so when they do bring it to work, at least it's not the first time they've done it. It's a little more polished. They've worked out some of the bugs. So I do think for me personally, if the job offered me zero training, I would probably not prefer that job, to be fair,
Mhm.
but it ain't on them.
Right.
It is not on them. I've seen people like, I'm not learning this VMware stuff until they send me to
To
VMware
train it
training.
all the
I'm like,
time.
what the hell are you
What?
talking about? The book $30. Go
Yeah.
VMware training, bro. Come on now. That's
Yep.
a nice to have. And we professionals. So I
Right.
do think as a professional, you should take some onus on that. And then if the company's willing to help, I think it's great. Last thing I'll say here is you could be the first person to start training at your job.
Mhm.
When I used to work in tech support at web hosting, so you actually have to be really hands on before becoming a software engineer myself. I remember when I started to learn about Zen virtualization, it was so new. Company was doing other stuff, not that. And I was like, man, this virtualization thing taking off. So I remember learning everything. I bought a server, brought it to work, sat it on the desk so everybody could see it, install Zen during lunch. So if you wanted to see what was popping, that's what we do in our after work. We got it installed, got it on there. We run the commands, and I would just give little miniature workshops during lunch. Like, hey, eat your food, gather around. I'm gonna walk you through it. I'm gonna walk you through it. And then that became part of the culture of like me learning and then people coming to learn from me. And I was like, yo, I'm trying to learn everything. So then we was like, yo, why don't we do brown bags all the time across everything? So if it's missing from your job, I haven't seen a lot of people get in
Opportunity.
trouble for training people to be better at their job. So I would try that.
Yep.
Me and my colleague on my last project, she was the last person on the team, and she started some notes on not the job per se, but the how to every day when tickets came in, where's going what. And she had her notes, and I had my notes. And she's like, I don't want to leave you out there like they left me. And so every day we would train together. I would shadow her together. And you know what? We combined our notes and made a SOP. We made a guidebook and for people to come in and we're just like, go here, look through this, and then we're going to start the training. Everything, how to do this job, not philosophy, what should happen, but if you go into this system, what to click, all of the pictures, everything that it's there doing the same thing on my own project. It's too much stuff. There's too many holes, it's too many systems. Okay, who's the new people here? Let's gather around. What can we contribute to this to make it easier on us? Because we are stuck in a crucial time where it's a lot of old habits. They're bringing in a lot of new people, a lot of new systems. Okay, where can we benefit while we're learning? So we're basically creating our own training.
I love that. Those are the people you remember. Everybody's worked with somebody like that. You remember them, right? You hear the stories.
Mhm.
I used to work with this person. They taught me about this, and I'll never forget it because that was the foundation for me moving up and on to where I want to be. So that is perfect advice.
So your next question is, what open source projects are currently piquing your interest?
So I guess the precursor here is what is open source to me? it's just not just a project on GitHub that they're giving away for free so they can charge you for the commercial version. Some people do that. That's one way to think about open source, free software you download from the internet. But to me, open source is the serialization of ideas. So back in the day, people used to just write white papers, right? You just write this white paper, hey, there's a different way of doing this thing. What open source is a manifestation of those ideas into something you can actually touch. And
Mhm.
most open source isn't finished. These are projects, not products. They're projects. So the ones that interest me now is like QLang, for example. I'm an advisor to the company Q Labs. One of the guys used to work at Google for a long time named Marcel. And when I say Google has configuration, think Terraform times a billion.
Mhm.
Imagine having configuration for everything. And they use a language called board config. It's really hard. There's white papers about it. And so Marcel is like, there has to be a better way to think about configuration with validation built in. So this is beyond like what you see in the Kubernetes world or Terraform or Helm charts. This is like the tip of the how could we make this better and take all the other concepts combined. So when I look at QLang, they're trying to solve configuration at scale. And so when you
Mhm.
look at that open source project, you might just look at the code or the binary you download and be like, I don't know. But when you study the project, you start to say, oh, these are the things that are missing from configuration. So if you're into infrastructure as code and you want to know what some of the cutting edge ideas are around that space, then you look at something like QLang. And that's more on that like quantum computing of config languages. It's seriously, if you look at it, you may say this is too pie in the sky. But if you look at it, there are some people that's using it now to solve some challenges. The next open source project that has my interest is like anything like what Hugging Face is doing. This
Mhm.
is the GitHub of AI ML models and data sets. So when you go there, you see not just the models. So I remember that thing we talked about, like models for anything, how to
Mhm.
recognize an animal from a picture, like any model like that. What you got is a community of people, professionals, hobbyists, scientists, anything. They're creating these models, putting them on Hugging Face, explaining what the model does, and giving you a data set to understand either how that model was trained or to run your own experiences and make the model better. So that's the
Mhm.
other part of open source that's interesting to me. Not just using and consuming, but then being able to see something and how it works and then making it better. So to me, when I say AI ML, Hugging Face is kind of where I start because it's open source. A lot of the models are open source, the data sets are open source. You can really learn a lot of detail about what's going on far and wide in that space. So got the Hugging Face. Then you get to the infrastructure side of AI ML and you get Flight. Flight is like a what would you do to Kubernetes so that you can actually manage a full ML pipeline end to end from data, training, serving, end to end, including being able to visualize a pipeline where you've done some training. For example, if you train a model to predict if someone's going to like a song or not, and they don't like the song, and you have to go redo the training set. So you're going to version your models. That stuff isn't clear today in ML world. They don't really use consistent package managing. You got people doing the equivalent of copying source code to a server and running it from there. That's kind of where some of that stuff is.
Mhm.
So a platform like Flight is what companies like Spotify are looking at. Like, hey, we got our own homegrown ML platform. Let's go over to Flight. And so when you look at it, again, nice community there, plenty areas to contribute, good documentation, and you can see some case studies on like how would you do ML at scale. And that project comes from Lyft, right? They were
Mhm.
running this is some people that used to work there and they moved over. So when I think about open source projects that are piquing my interest, it's not really about the thing that has the most GitHub stars. It's those projects where I know the people working on it are manifesting ideas into something I can touch and take that theory to practice. So I just pay attention to a range of projects like that. So those are the just a few. There's about 10 that I keep on my radar that when I want to learn, I ping the founders or the people in the community. Because when they say where it's going, they got to turn that into source code. So that's the way I think about this.
Gotcha. Your next one is with the ever-growing list of things to learn. How should we approach learning so many different things without rushing and not seeing enough progress to be confident?
The funny thing is, it's not a list of things to learn. And to be honest, the list ain't really growing. Now, at some point, you'll believe what I'm saying. But think about it this way. They say most things that you read in the newspaper is sixth grade reading level. Think about it. Newspapers
Mm-hmm.
target sixth grade reading level.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to major in English in college to read the newspaper and figure out what's going on in the world. So the vocabulary that you need, you probably learn by the time you're 11 or 12. And for most people, they don't add a ton of words to their vocabulary between 12 and 50. They don't. But it doesn't stop those people from writing hit TV shows, making movies. We know it ain't stopping some people making some rap songs. You some people ain't on sixth grade reading level,
Right, right.
topping charts. But they understand the fundamentals of language though.
Correct.
And so a rhyme scheme is a complementary thing to language. So there's so much you can do with fundamentals. So if you learn a few words, you have the fundamentals to make movies, poems, rhymes, country music, anything. Sixth grade reading level will probably get you to the point where you can produce masterpieces. So when I think about technology, it's very similar. What happens in tech? Data is created and moved across the network and stored somewhere. We've been doing that for 30, 40 years. Mainframe. We said, well, Kelsey, what about React and all these web front ends? Let me guess. The web front end is served over a network. It presents some form that you fill out. You save the form. It goes back over a network and it gets stored somewhere. It's the same fundamentals. So once you get the fundamentals of networking, data has shape, it has structure, it can be read, it can be stored, aka queries. So then you might go learn SQL. SQL is going to allow you to get at the data using a structured query language. You don't have to use SQL. You can use MongoDB and you can query it as JSON blobs. It's still the
Mm-hmm.
same fundamentals. So when I think about those fundamentals, it makes me get more clear. So then I say, okay, so what is happening? What are all these new projects about? So I'm gonna try to give you a very concrete set of examples. So let's say you was a network engineer 25 years ago. You learned everything about Cisco. You got your CCNA certification. You got a Cisco switch in your house. Your wife is like, why is this big ass switch with a fan on it in the living room when everybody else got a little Google Wi-Fi and they network seem to be working? I don't know if we really need a network switch with 38 ports on it. But you got one anyway, so you can keep your skills sharp. Great. So that's networking. And so then someone's like, yo, the cloud is here and they got virtual private networking. Now, if you really know Cisco well, you know what a VLAN is, you know that you can combine multiple ports to get more bandwidth, you know there's a logical abstraction layer on top of the physical ports. When you look at a VPC, you could get confused. You're like, oh, this is new, I gotta throw away everything.
Same
But then
thing.
when you look at the VPC, you're like, let me look at it. You gotta create a subnet? Is that the same IP ranges I got at the crib? Oh, MTU settings, that's the MTU settings were off, the same thing that's beyond my switch. Once you start to look at it that way, then the VPC ain't hard. The VPC is networking with a different API on top. So I would say this, grow confidence in your fundamentals. Kubernetes is not a fundamental.
Nope.
Kubernetes is not a fundamental. Compute is. CPU, memory,
Memory.
storage.
Yep.
And if you got all of those, then you would say, well, how does Kubernetes relate to memory, compute, and storage? And then we'll say, well, it places applications onto things that have compute, memory, and storage. What is it? What's running on Kubernetes? VMs. What operating system? Linux. The same Linux from 30 years ago? Yeah, Kubernetes got the same Linux from 30 years ago, except for it provides a different way to interface with those Linux systems. Now, you're right, there's some new components like scheduling. And I'm gonna do one more thing so you can understand what I mean by this. What is a scheduler? So you hear scheduler, you think of Mesos, Nomad, Kubernetes, pie in the sky, next level. And then I say, okay, let's back up for a second. What's the fundamentals? At your job, if you new to the game and I ask you what is the scheduler, you say, I don't know, Kelsey, that's new stuff. I say, okay, let's walk through it. You got 25 servers at your company. Now, let's be honest. A lot of y'all still putting them in spreadsheets. You got 25 rows in your spreadsheet. You might even got to call them for what Linux version. No problem. You got to do what you got to do. You got an IP address in there. And so at this point, you might even be using Ansible. Now, if you're using any configuration management tool and you got a machine database, even if it is just a spreadsheet, when you decide, someone say, hey, I want you to run Jira in our infrastructure. And they say, do we need to buy some new servers? What do you say? You say, no, we don't need to buy no new servers. We got 25 servers, and honestly, 15 of them ain't even fully utilized. We got room to run Jira. So what you gonna do? You're gonna go back to the machine database, and you're gonna pick the one that's not overloaded with things you
Mhm.
placed on them. That routine is scheduling, right? The algorithm you're using could be simple bin packing. Which ones have the least things on it, the most memory and CPU and storage free, and I'm going to put on the spreadsheet that this one's going to run Jira. You go to Ansible, you put it in your inventory file that it's going to be Jira, and you run Ansible against the machine aligned to Jira, and now it's running. Kubernetes does exactly the same thing. So if you understand what you actually doing already, you are the scheduler in the first example.
Mhm.
Kubernetes becomes the scheduler in the other example. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, this ain't new.
It's
This
the
is just what
same
you've been
thing.
doing automated. So that's all I want you to know is like, I want you to have confidence in your own abilities and skills and learn how to map what you're already doing to the new world. And you'll find that most of the stuff ain't that different.
I agree. That's why I always say, learn the fundamentals that last you a lifetime. All right. What does someone to experience similar career success in tech as someone like you? What does it take?
If we being honest,
Hmm.
number one, there's a lot of luck in this game. There's a lot of luck. If I would have picked Mesos, right? At the time, I could have been like, man, I'm going all in on Mesos, right? I'm at the Mesos Con on the keynote, Mesos everything. And then Kubernetes comes out, and he was like, man, Kelsey, move, bro. We trying to get to the Kubernetes conference. That could have easily happened.
Mm,
So there is a bit of luck in there. So I'm going to not believe that I just got this magical formula anybody can follow. It just don't really work that way. So situational. Now, I was prepared to take advantage of certain situations. So what is necessary to sacrifice? I'm telling you now, when it came to skill acquisition, when everybody else is probably watching something like Netflix in my time, going to Blockbuster, piling up on the movies, I was in a room. My newborn daughter was sleeping. I'm in the books. I'm not playing with it. Like I'm not doing a little bit. Nobody got to push me. Nobody got to tell me twice. I'm flipping through. Like, oh, they're not gonna be ready for you, boy. I'm flipping through 3, 4 times. I'm trying everything. If I don't get it, that's on me.
mhm,
When I get off work, I'm going to the meetup. I'm going to the meetup. I gotta learn everything. I'm gonna find somebody that's gonna do it. It's on me. So the sacrifice is the discipline to be up at 2 a.m. trying to figure out how to get this for loop to really work and understand the for loop, why Bash was invented, who is this guy named Chet that invented Bash, what's this Z shell doing. I need to know all of it. So I think that sacrifice is like having the discipline to go above and beyond the job description, to go above and beyond what your peers are asking you or pushing you to do. And the other sacrifice is when you say, I'm going to get on a flight to go speak at the conference, then you're not spending time with your family, right? And so
mhm,
part of that sacrifice is, I got a wife. There's been times where I'm on the way to go speak at Disney in the morning. I'm about to go to the airport. She got a career too, and your daughter's sick. So do she not go do something that's important that she got to do today at work? Or do you cancel your flight? And there's some cases where I got to cancel the flight, call the Disney people. Remember, in a couple hours, I'm going to be on stage. And you tell them it's not happening. People are going to be mad. People will question your professionalism. All that will happen. You say, all right, I guess that's what it's going to be. But I got to sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time, this whole family come first, not all the time. Sometimes. And so sometimes you got to make that decision. But sometimes you got to make the other decision. And sometimes when the best advice I got from my mother in law, it ain't going to be no 50-50 all the time. Sometimes it's going to be 80-20 in
yeah,
either direction. And you got to know when that's happening. So when I was doing needing a lot more, maybe taking care of the house, especially if she got a job too. And so, like, what is coming? What's the return on investment from all of this?
Mhm.
And it's not like everybody is in on the hustle. They might think the hustle is unnecessary. They might think it's extreme. And so, this is for me one of the things I had to learn how to do is focus on some transparency, meaning all of the accounts we kept separate finances, but you know how it is. If I die, it all go to them.
Mhm.
Here's where the money's going. It's growing. When I invest in these skills, nights and weekends, and I go to the next job, the revenue is growing. Look around. It's improving. It's growing. So when I retired at 42, my wife retired at 42. We
Mhm.
retired together. So that sacrifice is like, are you really doing this for yourself? Or are you doing it for the family? And if you're doing it for the family, it should be clear. There should be evidence. But I mean, I put in a lot of work at work. People say you got to have a work life balance. It's probably true. I didn't do that. The first 10 years of my career, I'm sleeping under the desk because the change window started at noon. We get off at 5. I could drive home, try to get a little nap, and drive back, but I'm not going to be the best person I can be at that. So, guess what? I sleep under my desk in the cubicle. It's not like they had a room with a bed in it. You just get a little pillow and you lay down underneath the cubicle. And then you set your
Palette.
watch.
Cute palette.
Yeah, you know how it go. And you wake up, you dust yourself off. You might go get that quick little wipe down. And you go in the war room and you grind it out and you do the change window to 6 a.m. You got to stick in there. I don't care if they change your part of the window, only take 5 minutes. You be there to 6 a.m., make sure everything worked. You drive home, go to sleep, and guess what? I'm still coming back by lunchtime because they ain't understand this idea that I should get the rest of the day off because I was in the change window. It don't always work like that. Now, I could have easily had a valid argument to say this is not right, we should not do that. But where I was on the grind, I gotta be number one. And maybe there was a better way, just to be honest, hindsight 2020. But that's the way I did it. So that's the sacrifice. So yeah, I think a
And
lot of
then
people
that
don't
your
really want the
then your
work.
kid, you got a kid. And so, when they're little, you think about, they're little, they're really not gonna miss it. But when they start articulating their wants and needs and push those buttons, you're like,
I mean, I quit a job when my daughter was born so I can get a job that worked overnight. My wife was in education, she was a teacher. She leave at 7 a.m. and she got to be there till about 3 or 4. So that means I had to find a job that can let me come in at 10 or 9, but I got to be home by 6 a.m.
Mhm.
So then I did the knock overnight. When you're just watching the screen at Cox Communication up Mansell Road in Atlanta, that wasn't the right career path for me, but it was right for the family. But I wanted to kind of keep growing. So I got to a job. Honestly, I might have been overqualified for that job at that time. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to come in. They were running Solaris instead of Linux. So I learned some Solaris.
Mhm.
I learned about the knock and monitoring. I learned as much as I could in that situation because it was the right thing to do for the family. And I still needed to work. So I just made the right thing. You got to sacrifice. But I wasn't going to just have a gap because of the situation. We as a team kind of figured out how to make that work. But I was always about, am I growing my skill set? And it's always on me to kind of make sure I'm doing the max effort possible.
Now, with that being said, with that start, right, with that sacrifice, do you think? I think it's easier now that you don't have to have that sacrifice. Me personally, I think now we have. I mean, we got to be honest, right? When we started, it wasn't no YouTube, right? It wasn't no go to YouTube University. It wasn't no Cloud Academy. You really were in there learning for yourself. I think there's some leverage there where you can learn, you can get to a GitHub, you can get to a GitLab, you can set up projects. You do have some forums that you can ask. You can literally go on Reddit or or Twitter, ask these questions before you go to the IRC, and you might get an answer if you don't get cussed out, right? So, you
But I
know,
think the baseline moves over time, though, right? So we probably had it better than the generation before us had it. The baseline was much lower because, again, since there wasn't as much access, those that took advantage of what was available got ahead, we got in those jobs, we got that experience. If you coming into a day and you just gonna watch YouTube videos, the other person that's literally contributing to these projects, showing that they make an impact, and you go side by side, you gonna lose. And they laying off people in December now.
Mm-hmm. It
They
used
used
to
to lay
wait to
you off in
January.
January.
February.
They laying off in December now. And I'm not saying that there's a way to always prevent that from happening. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying the baseline has changed. So what I try to do is say, what is everybody doing? That's the baseline. And I need to be above the baseline. That's
Correct.
just been my model. So if everybody got access to YouTube, then I know watching YouTube videos ain't enough. I gotta go be like, what's up? And that's just me. I've always been into I just want to do more than the baseline because I just wanted to make sure that I felt like I had an advantage.
Right. And so, what is more than the baseline now?
Um, and look, remember, I have a very limited perspective on all of this. Other people got other things that probably are equally as effective. But for me, I want to go to the source. That's
Not,
just
you're
me.
knocking on the door.
I mean, the thing is, the door is wide open now. With the address on it, they handing out flyers with the address, free admission, free before 10. They don't even care if you wear jeans anymore. The door's so wide open, they begging people to come through the door. They begging, please come through here and get these skills. They begging you. Some of them paying.
Right.
So when I look at all of that, I'm like, okay. If I'm serious, if someone said, Kelsey, you got to go get a job, but it required Terraform. I'm like, okay, it required Terraform. What is everybody else finna do? They finna go get the Terraform book. They're gonna go take the intro to Terraform course. That's what they finna do. I'm going to the GitHub project for Terraform. I'm gonna read the docs. If I find a spelling mistake, we finna stop and we're gonna get a code contribution in. Hey, this pull request fixes the spelling mistake in the getting started guide. First commit in, get it downloaded, play with it a little bit, join the Slack channel. Hey, what's going on over here? Hey, there's a new person that don't know Terraform. Let me see if I can help you. Right? Oh, we found a bug. Let's file the issue together. I might even try to fix it. So when we both show up, hey, I went through the getting started tutorial and guide. Good job. What about you, sir? What did you do? Well, I started by contributing, a little bit to the docs. I'd be in the IRC channel doing a little bit of support. There are 237 open issues. There are 212 pull requests. The average pull request is this old. It's written in Golang, but there's a little bit of JavaScript for the front end. We're not competing. That's how I'm approaching it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like the other candidates. Hey, we love the work y'all are doing. But Kelsey's in the other room. And his approach is different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I just try to do. So that's how I'm approaching it. And to me, I have never seen it like this before. Every major company is pretty much using the same major projects with the door wide open. I remember when I started, they was asking for HPUX.
Mm-hmm.
Where you
They
can't
never
buy that.
you can't contribute to that either.
You can't buy it. You can't afford it. You go and say, I want to get a HPUX license. What? The server $3,000, $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. It's not even approachable. But now it's just all out there for the taking. So for me, I don't know, man. I just get so excited about it because I have always wanted this much access. What was that ML quote? He's like, just show me the door. I'll get myself in. I don't need no charity.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't need you to be in the way. And I feel like there's still work to do. But man, there's a lot of situations right now where I feel like people ain't in the way no more. And it's just there. Man, we got to go take full advantage of that.
I agree. So we talked about that, joining the SIG groups of some of these open source projects, and then just joining open source projects all together. And we'll have a further discussion on that at another time. But in the meantime, in between time, this my last question for you. My last one. This is a Tamika question. If they called you, they come back to work tomorrow. A company says that we dropping all the zeros. Are you gonna take it? We only need you for 2 years.
Some people say, what is that number?
Mm-mm.
That number would have to be minimum. And even if it was 5 million a year, I'd probably still say no. People can't believe it. It's like, no, that after taxes, you're talking 3.2.
You're right.
Because it's not going to make a material difference in how I live. Now,
Correct.
maybe I got some ambitions to give the money to somebody else. That might be a reason. But it wouldn't be because of my situation or my daughter's situation or my wife's situation or my mama's situation or my brother's situation. That number is not going to probably change fundamentally any of that.
Hmm.
So it's like, why would I do it? Because you got to remember, I'm not trying to buy another car.
Right. We know
I
you
don't want a
EV all the
plane.
way.
3.2 million ain't buying the plane. So then we still short on that.
Do you want to
So
play?
I don't even want to play, but I'm saying if I did, 3.2 ain't for the. I might be a few more first class tickets on Delta. So fundamentally, the money, because you remember, I left a lot of money on the table to leave. It
Hmm.
wasn't like I got injured in the NFL and I couldn't play no more.
Right.
So whenever you get to a point where you're good, you never leave in zero. You always gonna leave money on the table. That's not even optional.
Hmm.
So when people say how much money, but now see, there's an irresponsible number. If someone said 10 million is a good number, so someone said 10 million a year, why not? Why not? Why not just take it and buy all the houses in some neighborhood and just have a rental business? Why not just go invest in all the startups I think are interesting? Why not go to the nonprofits and give them all 250K each? Why not? Who cares? Right? Just give it away at that point. So there's a number where I would probably say it would be irresponsible. If I didn't need the money, I could just give it away. Then just do that. Go work and just give the money away. So then I would have to have the mental preparedness to know that's what I want to do. And honestly, in retirement, I'm not even at that mental point yet where I want that, because you got to want that too. You
Hmm.
got to have that kind of vision, because just like this is why when people win the lotto who don't have no plan, you just win the lottery, man, strip club be sold out for 2 weeks straight. Foot Locker be empty because you ain't have no plan. You doing dumb shit. It's like, what what are you doing?
Right.
And so to me, I would have to have a plan for that to make that work. So it wouldn't be that. Now, what would I go work on? I don't know. I've been working so hard to stop working. So
Yeah.
I would have to
I
have a
was
reverse
wondering.
psychology.
I was wondering. Are you tired?
Nah, I quit before we got tired. Right? I advise startups. I have equity. I get monthly retainers. People pay me to speak and do keynotes. So the revenue stream is there. The investment is there. The work is there. It's just a different kind of work. For example,
Hmm.
again, I used to ask the question, why am I trading my time for money? Because I needed the money.
Hmm.
And so if you need the money for long enough, yeah, you try to find the best situation to put yourself in to try to make that easy as possible to deal with. I want to get a job where at least there's got to be some benefits, some good parts. For me, I would say the Google was awesome, Coral West was awesome, Puppet Labs was awesome. A lot of the jobs I've had have been amazing places to work in terms of all things being equal and compromises you have to make. But then if you could buy it back, that's what I chose to do. So that part is like, what would you work on? So mentally, I'm just like, hey, I'm out of that. I've earned my way out. So then what is work? So now we got to redefine what work is. So there's one type of work where a company come in, we do stand-ups, we use Jira, we want you to do a bunch of dumb shit because that's our process. Y'all know, like, y'all been working for a long time too. A lot of this shit is just dumb.
Hmm.
You're like, okay, so we finna keep our time. So you want me to stop what I'm doing so I can fill out this timesheet so you can put in this tool to figure out how fast I'm going or not going, even though this is knowledge work and I should be doing more thinking than typing.
Right.
But that's how we finna measure it. Okay, and we finna meet up in the morning. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm working on the same thing as yesterday.
Yep.
And hopefully I'll be working on the same thing today and I can get done what I told you I was gonna do for some imaginary date you made up. There's a lot of taxes we pay to work with a large group of people.
Correct.
That is not the same taxes you do when you pick the work and you kind of know what needs to happen. And so for me, it's like going back to that kind of working structure, I would prefer to avoid as long as possible. I'd rather do work where it's a little clear what needs to happen. And the only people that I'm working around are the people committed to doing that thing. I don't want people that just like, man, I'm only here because I'm trying to get a check. I'm only here because I ain't got nothing else to do. Nobody else want me, so I'm stuck here. I get it because that's a sad reality for a lot of people, but that's not the type of attitude I want to be surrounded by right now. So I think, and someone correctly pointed it out, you ain't really retired. You just get to choose the type of work you do,
Hmm.
and you're outside of the normal corporate America structure. So I'm gonna value that because some people won't get that in their
That type of
lifetime.
peace is priceless, though.
Exactly. So I'm trying to really, and it takes a lot to ignore. It's like you can get more money, but yeah, I want to make sure that I enjoy the peaceful parts of not living like that because I haven't. It's only been what 3 or 4 months. I haven't had as much time to think about being free from that world and letting my brain kick into that. Because y'all know how it is when you in survival mode or just get through it mode. It's hard to be hyper creative in that mode because you're dealing with all this other psychological stuff and then your mind needs to rest. But what happens when all the taxes go away? I'm gonna tell you that day I woke up and I couldn't log into the Google email. There's no Google email to log into. I don't have a badge.
Hmm.
And then your brain is like, you ain't gotta go check that inbox. You ain't gotta worry about some calendar reoccurring meeting. And so then that stuff starts to get shedded. And then when it gets shedded, then your brain goes into maybe I can remodel my fireplace, right? Maybe I can redo the closet, right? Maybe I should go see my dad I ain't seen in a long time. All these things become priorities. And then guess what you do? You execute on those because you're not tired.
I tell you what I did. I slept.
Yeah.
I went to
Sleeping
sleep.
is good.
I went to sleep. Literally, I went to sleep. Like everybody, like, what you doing? I'm gonna do these YouTube shows, and I'm ready to get back into bed. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep.
No,
Right?
she goes, "Why am I so tired?" And I look at her like this, Kelsey, because you needed rest. You were running on fumes, friend. Like you're running on fumes. Your mind is racing, 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 racing. It needs proper rest.
But I'll tell you who is getting some of the best Kelsey right now is when I work with my startups. And a lot of times when you get brought in, again, they're inviting you to be on their cap table so you get equity in this company going forward. They pay you a monthly retainer and they need results.
Hmm.
We ain't got time to play. They need results. So then your most creative self is being brought to that situation. Like, let me see the product, where we at, who is our market. And you try to take the last 25 years of experience and you try to manifest it into like what they're doing. Because you gotta remember, startups got a runway. Some of them only have a year left, 6 months left, 2 years left. So they got to make strategic bets and they got to get results. And I was just so happy the other day, reInvent. I didn't go to reInvent, but one of my startups went and they sent an email me. That was like, they want to reinvent. They work in the booth. These are the founders, the engineers. They work in the booth, pitching them the new stories we came up with, the new product ideas, the new roadmap. It's like you got to get people signed up so you can go visit the Walmarts, the blah, blah, blahs in their
Hmm.
home site so you can spend time on a whiteboard, get to know the people so then you can sell them the software if it
Right.
works for them. And I remember they took time out from their day. It was like, yo, Kelsey, it's working. It's working. We've been on the floor for a couple hours. People loving the demo, the new message. We got the signups. It's popping. People feeling it. We feeling it. This
Hmm.
is the right trajectory for us. Just wanted to let you know we got to go back to get at it. We just had a little break. So so that feels good. It's still
Hmm.
work, but boy, does that feel good because there are no taxes that come with that.
Right. But it's also the other part of that that feels good is that you were able to help someone else achieve their dream, achieve their idea. Right. That's the a lot of people ask why we do women in Linux. It's not about me. It's about other people seeing that light bulb come on that they didn't know that existed, or instead of it being a 30-watt light bulb, it becomes a 100-watt light bulb. It
Mm.
was dim and now it's bright. And so they get a chance to go down the path of seeing their own selves in the light that I see them, and then they start seeing that for themselves, and then they just excel from there.
I want
And
to say one
that's
thing
the
because I
beauty
know a
of
lot
that.
of people can't understand how people do this, right? Because most of this world is kind of like every person for themselves, get as much money as you can, or at least get more money than your neighbor so you can outshine them or whatever. And so some people really can't understand this idea where you literally do something for the benefit of somebody else, even if nothing comes back to you. I think as a parent, it became real. You have a child, like if you ever had a child, you got a newborn, you hold them, you want the best for that child, knowing that there's not much that they can do for you in return. And so as a parent, you learn how to be nurturing and all the right things to somebody else. And then when
Mhm.
they grow up and have success, like when they walk for the first time, you can, unless you're just a hating ass parent, then you can don't hate on your kids, but your kid take their first steps and smile, you you feeling good. You calling everybody, and they walking now. You feeling good for somebody else that's not you. Some people have never felt that in their life. So when you say it's about other people, watching a light bulb go off for themselves, and here's the thing, you probably know what that leads to. When you get new skills and they get more confidence to fill out that job application and they get that match and their salary go up, that changes people's families, situation.
Changes their
It
families,
a
right?
lot. And
A
so
lot.
people don't know what the value of that is because they never thought that made any sense. Why would you help people for free if you're not getting nothing in return? So I hope everybody get to experience what I think is if you into flexing on people, if that's your thing, I promise you there is no bigger flex than being able to help somebody else and them succeeding and you don't need nothing in return and you still happy. The place you got to be mentally, all assets of your life got to be in place, at least for that moment, for you to be able to do that. So once you get to the point where you can do that for real, no jealousy, no envy, no hate, none of that, that's how you know
Mhm.
you made it.
Yep. And I think the hard part about that is uh in the world that we live in, everybody wants to, have this flex on someone. And for me, I think the just like you said, the biggest flex is to see someone else's seat, but the bigger flex is to not just see one, but to see at least 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people succeed and take it to the next level. And when you see them take it to the next level, I pray and hope that people that are coming behind us are turning around and having that hand out to someone else or to a group of people to help them move forward. But at the same token, they all should be in communication with each other so you build that community, because that was the one thing you talked about this in the beginning, and you said, I don't know how y'all do it. When you get to the conference, y'all always got people with you. Well, we either bring them with us, or we meet them and we just latch on, or they see us on YouTube or what have you, and they just latch on. But the goal there is we're going to move as a unit as we go through this conference, and we're going to talk about what we found out or what we know. We may even give our own talks right there, sitting around in a circle with each other and our experiences and our stories. I think for me, going to the conference, it's not just the experience of the talks, it's the experience of the people who are there that I probably won't see again for another year or maybe another 2 years. But it's the experience of what have you been doing in your life, where are you at, and get a chance to see them grow throughout their tech career. That's the experience for me.
And then also, it's just as simple as practicing what we preach. We can't tell you to go to the tech conference and speak to who you see and be engaging if we don't do it, or we don't expect that excellence from ourselves. Who are you? What's going on? What's your name? And it's we all gather from that because it's just like a trail. Like it was like a magnet. Like us walking through the conference, even with you, it was like a magnet. They're like, oh, okay. They're going that way. Whatever is that way, we're going that way with them. And the group just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because not only it's an energy. Period. It's an energy that we exude. Um and that energy is infectious, and we want that energy to then spread to their areas. It's the community, as they say. You know, my grandmother always says, um, fix your home first, home training. Like, this is what Women in Linux is a little home training. We go teach you how to be out here in the tech streets. Like, this is what we do. This is how we not only survive but thrive and get out of that survival mentality. Like, it's comforting here. It's peaceful here. It is amazing when you know your tribe, and that tribe also, not just any tribe, but that tribe that feeds you and you feed each other. And then you can take that back and then bring it back, and we grow and we learn, and we're able to get over these hurdles that we're going through. And I can call you with any questions, and we can go show up for each other. It is power in that. That's the first thing you said. Man, when I see you guys, it's just I need that. We
Yes, sir.
need it.
Y'all tech family at this point.
I, I appreciate you. Now, to wrap it up, you're doing a Twitter space. I put your Twitter, or let me excuse me, I put your X out there for people to follow you. You're doing a Twitter space next Monday, correct?
Yeah, this is Bria, and she's dope because I met her at when I was at Google. She's a software engineer, and she left Google, and she has an entrepreneurial spirit. She has a mix of skills, but hardcore engineering and software, and I was just taking my notes. We did like a pre discussion, and so she was like, she has a love for gaming. We'll cover the details, but when she got into it, she was like, okay, someone taught her and it's like you should write your own gaming engine to support your game, which is this is wild. Like you're talking about physics engines, time and space complexity. Game engines is one of the hardest areas of computation there is because all the stuff that we're talking about, gaming is kind of the places where a lot of these advancements go first
Hmm.
because you need it. All that math and CS stuff, gaming is no joke. It is like the pinnacle of software engineering. Every pixel matter, hardware accelerators matter. This is the next level. So she writes a game engine in months, ships the game to the App Store. Now, she says it's a mistake. And so she just went back to Unity. But just think about how much skill you got to have to come into a new domain,
Hmm.
work at that level, and then still know how to focus and pivot back to the business. And so, what we're going to talk about in that one is number one, there's a lot of, when you work at a big company, any big company, but especially places like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, those things become your identity. It's how you introduce yourself to people. Even when you leave, you still sometimes introduce yourself as, I used to work at Google. Because there's so much that comes with that, like the immediate respect that you get from people, even if they're not in tech. When you say I used to work at Google, they just automatically say, "Oh,
Your
you
mama
must be
know.
smart. You must have made it. You must something." And so, like when you have to shake that identity, then you have to say, "Who am I?" And there's a lot that comes with who you are under that, and then you got to hit that reset button. So she hit the reset button. She went into gaming, and some of the things we talked about and that we will talk about in the space is like the question y'all ask: How much are you worth? Are you comfortable charging people as a entrepreneur for your product, for your advice, for all of these things? And also one thing that I really love that she touched on that was dope. She's grown to the point where she has to hire somebody that knows the Unity game engine. And we talked about like if you was at a big place like Google, you can hire someone that's going to need a little bit of training. You can hire someone that's going to take 3 to 6 months to ramp up, no problem. But when it's your money
You need you day
and
one.
you need them to contribute, we ain't got no time for no training.
Yep.
I need you to come in ready to go.
Yep.
And she was an engineering manager as well at Google. And so having her kind of understand what it takes to cultivate talent at a place like Google, and then how you got to reset all of that thinking. And the last thing I'll say here is we're going to cover some of the good parts of being at a place like Google and some of the bad parts of being
Mhm.
not like how she was treated, because she was a very competent, well respected engineer, in my opinion. And so what happens is the bad parts become like, do you need to be doing OKRs when it's just 5 people at your startup? Probably not. Do you need 2 year and 5 year roadmaps at a startup? Probably not, because you don't you need to be focused, and you should be way more in sync with each other, that you can be a little bit more dynamic. So maybe
Mhm.
you do need a couple of months of planning, but you're
Mhm.
so dynamic that you can actually pivot and move quicker. Because if it takes you a year to ship with a small team, you are doing something
Wrong.
completely wrong. But I understand why it takes a year to ship in a larger company, because there's so many stakeholders, communication, security, production, everything.
Correct.
But we talk about the processes that she kept and the processes she let go, because they just don't work at certain scales. So I think it's going to be a really good wrap up, because a lot of people do not talk about life after leaving these big tech companies, and why it's maybe not the end all be all. And there's so much more opportunity than raising money from a VC or working at a big tech company. There's a lot
Correct.
of in between.
Correct. You know, I've said this before. I don't think working at Google is a good start for someone just starting out in tech. I think, or let me say this: a startup is not a good place to start when starting out in tech. I think the smaller, maybe a Series D or E that can spend some time with you, maybe a good start. But I think you have to have, just my own personal thoughts, you have to build up some skills and some confidence in order to get to that level. But that's just what I see. That
I mean,
maybe
I
you
think you
may
make a
see.
good point, because it's all about the environment that you step yourself into, right? Because if you
Hmm.
step into a startup where they understand it's going to take time and they're going to invest it, they're going to be proactive because they know you're a little too shy to ask for questions. You're just going to be sitting there doing nothing, especially if you're working remote. That's not, you're right. I think sometimes remote ain't good for a lot of people that's new, right?
Hmm.
Because they just left on this island. They don't know how to really engage and build a community for themselves.
Hmm.
All right, look, it's
You
late.
out.
I'm so glad y'all invited me, because y'all always keep it super real, transparent, and honest. Also, it feel like family when I come on this thing, so I feel like I'm talking to my sisters right now. So I appreciate y'all for keeping this community going, keeping everything going, and I'm going to try to continue to share as much as I can with detail and nuance about
Hmm.
everything I'm learning and yet to learn.
Yep, yep. We talked about it. We'll most definitely get together. We got to get our Twitter Spaces going one day and do that. I appreciate you for coming out and taking your time and to share with us. And D, you got anything left before
No,
we let Kelsey
I
go?
thought Kelsey was gonna drop and we were gonna wrap it up because last time when I cut off the show after the guest, you'd be like, I wasn't finished. And I'm like, okay. So I'm
All
gonna
right,
let Sir Hightower drop and we can wrap it up and go from there. How do
all
you
right.
feel about that?
That works. All right, man.
Thank you,
Kelsey,
Kelsey.
you
I
be safe.
appreciate you.
I just want to make sure I give a shout out to Keep It Techie for the $10 super chat. Also, as well as Antonio, man. I hope you're all right, man. I was thinking about you the other day and I wanted to call you. Sim, I appreciate you. John, thank you for coming up and being a 300K earner. We appreciate you, man. And y'all can see I'm getting hoarse too. I appreciate everybody for sticking around with us.
I
And
mean, Kelsey gave us 3 hours.
I know, man. We
She
don't just
gave us 3 hours.
yeah, we don't normally get that from people, right? We don't normally get that, but I appreciate him. I also appreciate you all for sticking around for 3 hours. Those that are new out there in Twitter space or X space or Facebook or wherever you're at. International, I saw some people internationally in the chat as well too. I really appreciate y'all from rocking with us and also spread the word. Like, we're trying to get as many people into tech, strictly infrastructure per se, but infrastructure is loose. But at the same token, I want to give a shout out to those that watch the replay. Those that watch the replay, we appreciate you. Helmut Chili just gifted somebody a membership. There y'all go. We appreciate y'all. D, anything before we get out of here?
I just want to say thank you guys for showing up, listening, and Kelsey is so dynamic as a speaker. And I know we're up here every week and we say things, but to hear from the horse's mouth, and somebody that without a college degree has rose up in the tech game as high as he has and still in it to win it, but just took a pivot. I hope that gives you guys some perspective about where you are in your tech journey, whether you are starting out, whether you're in it, or you're re-entering, the space. It gives you perspective of that, it it's not easy all the time, and it does get tough, but give you just a different vantage point on wherever you're at in your journey right now.
Yep. All right. Well, we appreciate you all, and I hope you got something out of it. I didn't want to put his name out there on the thing because when I put it out there, y'all, some people be like, "Who is Kelsey?" or whatnot, and some people know who he is. But I wanted to surprise the members because you just never know what's gonna pop off when we do these things. All right, y'all.
Alrighty, guys, have a good one.